Hello, Karina.
Hola, perdona.
No pasa nada.
Yo creo que solo estamos los hosts. Esto no había pasado en todo el summit, and it had to happen for the best session. The one I'm hosting and the best one.
It's and like Gemma will sit there. It's not my fault, you know. Me and Matt would be blaming ourselves.
Made another joke.
Okay. I'm getting an echo now.
You're becoming a DJ.
I'm getting an echo now. So okay. I wonder if we can do anything about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Okay, now it's okay. Now I need to try and work out Zoom. Okay. Right, anyway. Okay, I warned you twice now, Matthew. No more jokes, okay? You crashed the whole system. So anyway, let's kind of skip forward and all of this kind of stuff. Anyway, you could have been French, you could have been German, but you decided instead Spanish.
Tell me how much money you have.
Yeah, which is like, you know, you could have been a great Frenchman. Anyway, right. So anyway, you went to a seminar. It was this Irish guy and this Austrian guy, and suddenly they talked you into starting a business. And wow, okay. It's funny, actually. This is not the first time this has happened to me. And I was, you know, people have said, oh yeah, you made it sound so exciting, you know, and I was like, you know, I was there for the free beer or whatever. But anyway, no, entrepreneurship is great. I wouldn't have a word said against it. Okay, so Gemma, let's talk then about the companies you've started and also the company that you're running now. So first of all, the companies you've started, and then the companies you're running now. Go ahead.
All right. So in 2011, my friend and myself, we were living in a couch in a London flat. And from our couch, we thought it was going to be a cool idea to rent our house for people who want to come to London. So we created Alter Keys. At the time, we didn't know that Airbnb existed. Apparently, we did a very poor research. In 2012, when we knew it existed, what we did was, first we got depressed for an hour. And then what we realized was that we could learn tons from them. So we copied what we wanted to copy, and we improved what we wanted to improve. For example, something that we didn't copy was that to us, the traveler were the key to our business. So we wouldn't charge anything to the traveler. As you might remember, Airbnb's policy until last year, they were charging the whole or most of the amount of money to the travelers, and to us it was a mistake. So the things that we liked, we took them as part of the Alter Keys family, and the things that we didn't like from others like Airbnb, we improved them. So it was a tough business because, first of all, we were first timers. We knew nothing about how to run a business, all just the things that you learn in the movies, very little, and even less how to scale it. So the program should have been very handy a few years ago, Joe. And so from our couch, we created the company. We get some internship guys and so on. We got our first customers. And then we got the backing by Mercadona's guy, Juan Roch, in 2015, like 4 years later. And after having you in the board and providing us with.
By the way, I'm going to talk about that. You anticipated it's almost as if we practiced, but anyway, but that was the thing that first impressed me about you. That you kind of stood up to a billionaire, which is like, well, okay, very clever, even though if he's a nice, friendly, cuddly billionaire, not like any of those scary billionaires you see on TV, but still, you were in their incubator, I guess their accelerator, whatever they call it, and you just weren't happy with the terms, and you said, no, I'm not going to accept this.
Actually,
that's basically what happened.
That's true. They told me that it was in Spanish. They have a saying like "Estas lentejas." Either you take it or you don't. If you don't take it,
it's a very Mercadona thing to say. Yeah, talking about lentejas. Yeah, that's the beauty about being a foreigner, Gemma. People say things to me about lentejas, and I just chorizo, and I just don't understand what they're saying. So I just sit there and smile. So anyway, they said to you, "Take it or leave it," and you decided.
Yeah, if we took it, it's gonna be a death. And I explained to them, like, pal, I am putting my whole life here. I moved the country, I moved everything, I put all my money and all my energy. I will do nothing to damage my company. So by taking it, I'm gonna damage my company. So we didn't take it, and we lost $250,000 at that time. We watched painful, and so we moved back to Madrid again. And then I heard a guy, a strange Irish guy speaking in English, giving advice about Airbnb. And I was in the room. I said, what the fuck? Who is this guy? Why he's talking about Airbnb? And I got to some context about yourself and so on. And they told me that obviously they liked me because they told me that you were interesting and a guy. No, I'm kidding. And we started to talk. And,
I told you no jokes, you'll crash the system. Yeah.
sorry.
No, but it was quite. I think I was very critical of you, Chema. If I don't mistake it, I told you I was pretty. Like, I didn't really expect to ever see you again, if I'm honest. But maybe that sometimes that works, right? Sometimes people. But I remember I was quite critical of your business model and a couple of things you were doing.
Yeah, but anything that helps me keep going up, I take it always as a plus side. So we started to talk, and I convinced you to become part of our board a few months later. And we had a hell of a ride. We also convinced some more guys to help us and provide some experience. And in 2014, we started a negotiation with roommate hotels. That they were, they wanted to become a major player in the business. And one of the things I said to the president of Roommate Hotels before we sold the company was, how big do you want this company to be? Because if you want to have just a regular 100 million company, we are not for sales. If you want to be, make it big, then we want to be in. So we sold the company. We raised a bit more than 9 million. And it was, it's called BMate, still running in different countries. It was a nice experience, but then I learned that another Spanish saying, if there is a captain, the sailor doesn't matter, no? Si donde hay patrón no manda marinero. So I realized.
Welcome to Chema, Spanish lessons with Chema. Where? Tell us now. What's the way to the bus station? Okay, how do you? Donde? It's okay. Anyway, I have bad memories, but you're very true. I mean, and that's true. That in other words, that a captain can only have a ship can only have one captain. I guess is that what you say? So especially in the case of Roommate, where the founder and the CEO is has a very strong personality. While some arguments are healthy, you just can't be arguing every single day, right?
Yeah, especially if you're not aligned. So he's a great guy, great businessman, but we are like native lights. And so at one time I had to leave the company after 1.5 years. And then I realized that at that time I was doing some very little angel investment in prop tech companies such as Hauser and so on, which worked out very well. And I realized that the way people manage their homes were very inefficient, and more important, that's something actually that I discussed with you a few months ago in my office, Joe, is the way people travel is ridiculous right now. So before Ryanair, everything to travel was not very affordable. And before Inditex, clothing were not very affordable. So what we wanted to do is make affordable the luxury and the good services. So we provide nice apartments in Madrid, Sevilla, and hopefully soon in other areas of Spain. Nice apartments, very well decorated, nice services, everything as automatic as possible. And by doing that, we provide a good experience to the traveler, and we create more incomes for the owner. We did that, and now we are launching another department called Alter Home Hotels to do the same thing, but for small hotels that need help. And before the COVID, this year we were going to make around 6 million in sales, around 4 million in revenue, which is good and healthy because all this is a small amount. The most important part of it, and something that I learned also from you, Joe, is that we didn't have an investor. We still don't have an investor. We didn't have any loans. We bootstrap it. We are still are. And although our company was making already 500,000 euros a month, my salary was and still is zero money. And that's a philosophy that I am happy with, because I'd rather to put all the money or the resources in the company to make it bigger. And then later on, I will hopefully take my rewards. But before I wanted to focus on the company.
I often say that to people because it's a great negotiating strength. You know, if you're trying to convince somebody to come work for your company, you say, look, I take 0, you know, in salary. Or in fact, and it's one of the big issues with startup and scale up. I remember in one of my company's Hot Hotels, as soon as we took investing, like everyone read in the newspapers that we had a couple of million in the bank and everyone was kind of increasing their profits and stuff like that. So, you know, it's one of those things that you should try and stay. They talk all the time about Walmart. If you go to Bentonville, that the headquarters are made of plywood and, you know, they all this kind of thing, that there's no luxuries. So by paying yourself 0, it gives you very good negotiating leverage. And also by not taking money, it basically means that, you know, the clock isn't ticking. You know, while investors are a healthy part of the ecosystem, you know, they're not for all kinds of companies, and especially when you haven't worked out your product fit. I mean, I don't know how many investors are listening to me and whether they hate me, because I tell them all that I send all my students their way. But I always say to take investment before product market fit. Like capital should be growth capital. You know, in other words, when you have product market fit and you know exactly what you want to do, then that's great. You know, for the very building a sales engine and all those kind of things. But when you take venture capital before product market fit, it just ends up you use investment capital as working capital, which is, you know, sometimes leads you to make bad decisions. So and that's always been my way. So, you know, investing is fine, but it, you know, more in the growth sense rather than in the product market pre-product market fit stage. Okay, we'll talk to you about the COVID stuff in a second, because that's really interesting. So let's go to Mathieu, and you can talk to us about. We might skip Doctor, okay, because, you know, sometimes you know, it's
but I mean, it's good. It's good to talk about that, like.
Okay,
because...
no, but it's good. But it's like U2 can't play all their songs, or we'd be there all night, you know. So anyway, okay, talk to you about Doctor, and then okay, we'll because, you know, it's funny how there are you were kind of too early, I guess, rather than anything else, right? You were. It wasn't that the idea was wrong. You were just too early.
Well, I think it depends. I think it depends on the market you're tackling, you know, like, because my first company was in the health tech sector. Like we were focusing on booking doctors online, right? And actually in Spain, Spain, I think, is a very bad market to innovate in the healthcare sector, because first you have like 75% of the market that's divided between 17 comunidades autónomas, like you know, public things that's completely like is like selling to the states, right? That takes ages. Then you have like from the 25% remaining, you have like maybe half of it that's dominated by 3-4 major groups. So it's again like negotiating with giants, and then you have all the little remaining pieces that you need to deal with, right? So I mean, my first company didn't go as expected. We had to sell the company. So at least it was for me like a great experience in knowing what not to do, right? And actually, I think that we were talking about movies, no, Chema, before, like how startup movies seems great, but at the end, I think the Facebook movie just did like lots of harm to entrepreneurs, right? Or entrepreneurs want to be, because they think that first time, poof, it's going to go like to $1 billion company, and it's not like this. It's more like a long run race, and every time you actually every time you have to re-question yourself, right? And now it's my third/4th company I'm starting, and actually I have to re-question myself even more, like every time, right? I didn't remember how hard it was to start this company from scratch, even if it's your third or fourth company, right?
Well, also like, yeah. But what's interesting about Doctor is that investors that you had who you lost their money reinvested in your subsequent company.
Yeah,
so
the same is happening now with my new company, right? Actually, like life is always a long run scenario, and if deals don't work now, they might work in 10 years time, right? So this is again like messages for entrepreneurs want to be, right? And my second company turned out well after lots of experiments and so on. Suddenly we start finding like something that, you just start seeing the hockey stick. It was in the bars and restaurant industry, and suddenly we started having like 85% of restaurants accepting our solution, right? After simplifying everything we were doing to a strict minimum of payments in bars and restaurants. And at the end, we ended up selling the company to a lunch voucher company called Up, or Cheque Gourmet in Spanish, and we scaled it.
And they gave you a nice job with a lovely salary and a big check, and you decided it wasn't enough and that you wanted to come back again.
No, I mean, I miss the kind of rock and roll thing of being an entrepreneur, and
it's all about chatting up girls in bars. I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah.
and no, I mean, corporations is politics, right? And startup is about doing business, I think. So as politics is not always fun. I mean, I prefer to go back to doing business and to tackle new opportunities. As Chema said, you might nowadays being working until 70 or 80, I don't know. So I still had many years behind. So I said, okay, let's give it another try, right?
Yeah. Well, the average age of a successful founder is 45. So, both of you guys are just starting, really. You know nothing till you hit 45.
So what's your next startup, Joe?
It's funny you say that, but anyway, more this session is being recorded, so my lips are sealed. And now, I mean, I'm good. I said I'd come back. Actually, what we're going to do is take the questions, because I love this guy, Andrei, with questions. My God, I hope you're taking my classes if that's possible, because I love people with questions. So maybe, Chema, can you take the first question there, please?
Sure.
I mean, I can read it out for you.
What was it?
Do you have the Q&A up in front? Do you have
now I got it. Yeah.
Okay. So I can read it out for you, but I know you can read, so I'm not going to do that.
Barely, but I can.
Okay. So, I have one question for Chema. First of all, congrats on the journey. Second, when are you inviting someone to the board or invest? How do you decline the shares control? That's a very technical question, but let's have it. I want to encourage questions. So whatever the first question is, we always encourage it.
There are two different questions here, right?
And by the way, Chema is he has a law degree, so he should know about this stuff as well.
Well, in law school, they only teach you in which book you need to look after when you are working. But so there are two different questions. I'll try to be as quick as possible. When you try to have someone on the board, you want him to be actually very, very eager to help him, although they won't help you because of the share. They will help you because they see a fit with you, they like you, they like your business. That's my idea, at least, and Joe, you can confirm it or deny it.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the thing I always ask people about, when the number comes up on your phone, do you answer it? And if when the number comes up on your phone, if you don't want to answer it immediately, then that's not a good fit, and you shouldn't work with that person. I'd like to think each time you call me, I do answer. Please say yes. But I certainly know that what you're asking me is generally well considered in advance. You're not a very impulsive kind of a guy. You think before you make a phone call.
So I know the Joe test, right? Pass the Joe test, right?
Yeah. Well,
I don't think many people in my phone will pass the Joe test, though.
Okay, very good. Matt's trick for getting people is to call them late at night. That's his trick, So but that works as well. Okay, so right, so that's the first thing and it's a very good point to make, an absolutely point. Whereas that it's not about the money. People don't do it for the money. They do it because it's a person they're interested in spending time with, a person that they feel good about helping. So
they also can see that they can be learning from the business as well, and they can add value. And from an investor point of view, which is totally different, when you want to have an investor, and now we are doing a raise, as you know, Joe. So what you're looking for is money, and what you're looking for as well is how much piece of your company you need to give in exchange for the money, plus smart money. Yeah, sure. But what you want to have is money in exchange of shares. So my recommendation is try to understand how much is worth your company, the valuation of the company, considering your metrics and the scenario, the current scenario, which can, you know, screw you a little bit, and also about what happened with other competitors, and define how much money you need. And with that, with these two factors, you can understand how much piece of the action, how much piece of your company you can share with investors.
Yeah. I mean, I believe that, you know, I get asked to go on boards and stuff like that. And I always say, let's just begin working together, you know, and then when there is like an event of some kind, perhaps when there's a raise or actually a transaction happening, then we start to discuss kind of the finer terms. But if you have to have everything in place, very often it can kind of be an issue. So I say, let's just start working together. Let's just agree to meet 4 times. Let's just agree to kind of start working together. And then 4 becomes 8 before you've even thought about it. And then maybe a raise is happening, or you're tidying up some legals or something. And then it's a good point to kind of formalize the agreement. And at that stage, then both of you sort of know what you bring to the table, and that actually is the opposite of sort of what it says in a lot of books, that like get it on paper before you do anything kind of thing. But I guess that's the difference between, you know, the real world and maybe the theoretical side.
That's something that happened to me in the current fund. We are now raising 2 million, and one of the things that the investors always ask me from the very beginning is what's the valuation of the company. And so I was so fed up to answer that question that I created myself a video and sending a link. And in the link, I never answered the valuation of my company, because what I say, and that's what I truly believe, is actually, to me, the valuation is quite important. But the most important thing is not the valuation alone, it's the terms. And it's also to understand that they're going to find the right partner. So let's talk first about how you see the business, how you can add to the business, how you think about us, and so on. And later on, if you have common sense, and I have common sense, which we do, and if you have a win-win mentality, as we do, we'll work it out. So the evaluation is going to be worked out. But let's focus on whether this makes sense for you and for us before we talk about money.
Yeah, there's a George Bernard Shaw story that I'd like to tell, but unfortunately we're on camera because it has a naughty word in there. But anyway, I'll tell you offline, or some of you might know it. But I hope most people are using safe notes anyway at this stage. I mean, that seems to be a generally agreed way of doing things, to kind of push off the discussion of the valuation until you have more information. You know, I'm basically telling people, more and more people, to do that now. There are standard documentation, and people are quite happy with them. Yeah, it is sort of interesting. There's an interview that Zaran Denzel did, who's the founder of 20, with the Wall Street Journal, and he actually had that exact quote, that, you know, you can pick the valuation if I pick the terms. Because you often hear this thing about the valuation is something, but there's clauses within clauses with clauses, and, you know, ratchets and you know, double dips and all these kind of lovely legal phrases that you get to hear about. You know, I've seen that. You know, I know of someone who sold their company for, I think, 7.5 million, and she got nothing because of like the double dips and the provisions and stuff like that. So you have to kind of think about that. So
don't you think that actually, like, contracts and terms are more like a philosophy, and that afterwards you will renegotiate everything all the time?
Yeah, so I think that. Yeah, I think that certainly happens in football, right? You know, like that. Yeah. I mean, Pogba has negotiated his contract about 5 times at this stage, you know, as he promises to be good from now on.
So that's why I think it's not like as important to negotiate every single detail of the contract. It's more like a philosophy that, do you match with this guy's philosophy or not? Because anyway, things will go differently than expected, like for good or for bad, and you will have to negotiate at some point, right?
Yeah. If a big competitor enters the marketplace, like in the case of Chema and Airbnb or something, then literally you have to renegotiate everything, like the pace at which you would proceed, the ambition you would have, the markets you would attract, the amount of capital you need, like literally all of those things. And a good investor will always kind of, always be open to that. But that's another reason for using kind of standard terms and standard documentations. I mean, the Carrieris brothers have pretty much a standard shareholders agreement that they sort of use. And then it's a sort of like, that's kind of what, it's a sort of not a big discussion thing then. And you're seeing it for more and more VCs are having a standard documentation, which like doesn't have the sort of sneaky stuff in there. And it just gets them over the hump, because especially if it's a first-time entrepreneur, the first-time entrepreneur has a voice in their head going like, I have to negotiate, or he or she will think I'm a bad entrepreneur, which isn't necessarily the case. A lot of entrepreneurs, they like people who are efficient as well and confident. So that's but I want to try and move off this area. So just in case we don't get to it, I want Mathieu, if you could talk to us about your current company now, and also maybe the relationship with COVID and why it's, you've got your timing right this time.
Yeah, well, actually now I'm setting up a set of virtual clinics for a specific area in healthcare. So starting with women healthcare, which is like quite weird, right? For being a guy, like starting a women healthcare clinic. And actually we are now opening like specific mental health virtual clinics as well, because like COVID has made a lot of damage for people in terms of mental health situation. And actually, like sometimes I think entrepreneurship as well is a matter of luck, right? Because we started the company like a year ago before COVID, and just COVID like came, and it was like being a surfer and expecting the perfect wave, and the wave came, right? And now everyone is doing like, we're meeting on Zoom, we're doing like everything like digitally, things that CEOs of company were not like willing to do. So and nowadays you can like close anything like over the phone, right? And on video conference. So I mean, COVID was good for us, but we still have to find product market fits at the stage we're at, right? So we still have to do lots of experiments. We still have to find the perfect, like going to a physiotherapist, and where he's checking your back and where does it hurt, is where's the point when it hurts, right? So it's still this that we are trying to figure it out. But I mean, of course, for us, we were lucky that healthcare is was one of the sectors that was positive for the.
Yeah, I mean, everything wasn't possible, we couldn't possibly talk on video is now possible, in the same way that like we couldn't possibly do online classes, we're now doing online classes, or prescribing over the internet and all of those things. So everything that suddenly wasn't possible, everyone is like wondering what the problem was. Just while I'll do a bit of a professor thing right now, which is to say that, there's the thing about the early stage, the pre-product market fit, is that the magic word is experimentation. That's what you're doing. You're searching for a scalable and repeatable business model. And I always say that a good business plan is a list of experiments, I mean, a list of things that you think may or may not be true. But as Matt correctly says, that once you identify like an area that's looking very positive, you then have to kind of go deeper into it, because if you start to scale too quickly, once you found something, you could run into what's called premature scaling, because it could be a random effect. It could be something that would come from something that may not be repeatable. And in Steve Blank's famous definition, a startup is a search for a business model that's repeatable and scalable. So it must be repeatable, so not due to cold weather or something like that. And then also, the idea that when you find that something is interesting, you have to try and kind of really go after that thing to try and find out. And the big magic phrase is this idea of doubling down what works and stop doing what doesn't work. And that's, the conversation I've had with Gemma on numerous occasions, that like a lot of his businesses are going well in different ways. And I'm sort of pushing him to say, listen, he's a good horseman. I always say to him, listen, Gemma, you can't ride any more than one horse, even you. And you know, that's often the issue, but it's so hard, you know, making choices. Our brains are not designed to make choices, because our brains are designed for survival, and that means like not limiting your possibilities. So, you know, that's one of the hardest things about scaling. So, you know, Mathieu will have maybe mental health, but then he'll also have becoming pregnant, and he'll also have like lots of other things that are going off, and he's thinking like, should I just become the guy I want to call if I want to get pregnant? Or did that come out of my mouth funny? Or should I be the guy I call, you know, like in the same way with, I discussed with Chema, like, look, are you 1 month rentals? Are you 1 week rentals? Like, you know, are you 6 months? Are you get me a hideaway in the mountains? Are you get me a cool place? Like, you know, this idea of doubling down on what works, even if other things are still interesting. The rocket fuel, in order to get you to escape velocity, you only have enough fuel for 1 rocket, and you have to kind of put that down. We've got another question there. I'll come back to Andre's question in a second. Thank you for sharing your experience. What do you recommend to test and prototype a new product service and be sure? This is a total Mathieu question. I mean, this is your guy here. Can you see the question there, Mathieu?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, like we have one of my co-founders, like the content guy, right?
Yeah.
I think he has been doing landing pages for almost half of the time of our company so far. So I mean, like quick MVPs, you can test it with InVision, you know, which is like just like putting like paints kind of figures like on a way for you to imagine that it's a map that's working, and actually you can see the reaction of people, right? That they really think that this is up and running. But nowadays, like, I mean, you can set up a landing page with a Squarespace or you know, like Shopify or whatever you want, like in half an hour, right, or half a day. So my point is try to test it as soon as you can, and get like and don't fall in love with your idea.
Yeah,
because this is the worst that you can do, right?
If the customers decide they like something else about your business, then you go with that. Like your job isn't to try and validate your initial idea. Very often you just decide, okay, people want to eat cereal at night, you know, they want to drink vodka in the morning, you know, it's like, okay, if that's what they want to do, you know, like you don't have to validate, you know, we're all just a product of our experiences. So there's no way of saying that, you know, our way is the best. But I think there's like, the idea is that you just try stuff and just not be afraid to try and have the kind of experimenter's mindset. Like a lot of the great experiments, whether it's discovering penicillin or, you know, all sorts of things, like were just complete accidents. So like doing is valid, even if it's like, you know, even if it's sort of, you think that there mightn't be like this will never work kind of thing. Just kind of have a go. Like this they say a lot in the film business, you know, nobody knows anything. Like you never know kind of until you try. So it's a sort of, yeah, it's an interesting, but I mean, I know, like I used to tease Mathieu about his, like, you know, he had the data he had on stuff was like, I used to say to him, I need you to be less German and more French. In other words, like, you know, the German side of him would come out and he would have like spreadsheets exhaustively detailing like the most micro aspect of how people using our product. And I was like, no, you have to try and see the wood from the trees. But you know, so I guess, you know, he would always argue back that it's necessary. So, okay, so there's like, I think there's another question that has come in. So let's take that question. When evaluating the risk of full investment, at what point in the business development process do you realize your idea is worth going all in? Yeah, I mean, these are all great questions, but they're all kind of like, how do you know she really loves you and doesn't just want your money? Or, you know, these kind of like, all of these kind of eternal questions, you know, that you get. And there's there's no 100% solid gold answer for any of these things. But like, let's have a...
I mean, like, entrepreneurship is not like, you know, you don't have to be, you have to be a bit crazy to be an entrepreneur, because like the odds are always against you, like 99% of chances that it won't succeed as expected, you know. So when you know that you're ready, you never know, right?
Yeah. It's not like building a bridge. I mean, I say that on the syllabus for my elective, that if you want to build a bridge, I can, you get concrete and sand and metal and whatever you do, and you measure it and you put up the bridge and stuff, but in entrepreneurship, it's more of a kind of a mindset, that you have a couple of kind of guides. The other thing is that in most cases, what you learn, Matthew's coming back in a second, in most cases, what you learn from experience is what not to do. And in other words, that if you look across companies, if you study across companies, it's very possible to see what you should not do. But it's much harder to find out what you should actually do, because every business is different, and that the world is changing, and sometimes things that works in the past. But the mistakes people make generally seem to be the same, hiring the wrong kind of people, trying to go too fast, those kind of things. So the mistakes tend to be the same across companies, but the things that you do to be successful generally tend to be different in each company, which kind of makes things hard. And if there's one thing I would say, it's trying to go too fast pre-product market fit. It's just something you can't get 9 women to have a baby in a month. It's just like the standard product management stuff, that you have to try and just go through the cycles, go through the experiments, see does the experiment repeat, see does really, when somebody says I love your product, say like, well, how much do you love it? Like, if I tried to take it away from you, how would you respond? Like how much do you love it? Would you fight me for it? Would you pay me for it? These kind of things. You have to try and keep going deeper. I mean, I always talk about donuts for whatever reason, that if you decide you want to sell donuts, then you have to decide, is it in boxes of 4, boxes of 8, boxes of 16, chocolate, cream, because a lot of particularly startups have a kind of a blockbuster product in them. Like, they have one thing that goes better than other things, and your search again is to kind of double down on that. Now, once that starts to scale, you can then go back to the other things. But generally, you'll find, if I was starting a donut company, the idea is to find the box of 4 that have 2 chocolate and 2 cream, with the yellow packet, they fly out the door like crazy. And then that's the thing that kind of gets you momentum and stuff. And then you can start to kind of, again, fill out the kind of product portfolio. Matt, did you want to come back in with something?
No, and it's just exactly the same. There's 2 phases, right? Like pre-product market fit. And once you find and you know that you found it, it's just go all in, So my question is like, or my point is that until you didn't reach this phase, keep on doing experiments and don't spend like all your resources on one thing.
Yeah. Just Gemma, I said I'd come back to you about the COVID question, so just let me do that. So
again, the COVID,
Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, people are sort of saying that, like, listen, you can just tell me, move
it's
on.
More fun talk about anything else, but
yeah.
COVID and how it affects us.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, we don't have to, but I did promise, and I know how your mind works. That if I say I'll do something, and if I don't do it, you're the guy who always remembers, and he says
like
to me
my
afterwards,
ex-girlfriend.
Yeah. Like minute 39, you told me you were going to come back to me and ask me about this, and you never did. Therefore, the whole event was a complete disaster. Anyway, let's. But I think the thing about COVID is, it's obviously in the business you're in, it was particularly devastating. I mean, it's been good for Matt in terms of people are moving online. But what it's like, I've been in your office, which used to be full of people, and it's not full of people. They're working from home now. Literally, you have your dog gets to roam freely around the office these days. So sort of talk to just about the whole COVID thing and how it affected your business model. Oh, the dog is here. Oh, beautiful. Okay. Anyway, Chema loves animals. So talk to me about how it affected. Just talk to me about how it has affected your business model and in what direction you're going now.
So in summary, the worst thing, we have lost this year over 5 million euros. For someone who has no money in the bank, 5 million, it hurts a lot. And we have lost momentum. We have lost the trust of partners. We have lost the trust of some people who work with us. That's the worst thing, right? And now let me tell you the good things about COVID for us. It's like, when haven't you ever thought, Karina, Matthew, Joe, like, damn it, I wish I could, start again university or be again, but just we want to know what I know right now, right? As I have started that before, with COVID, this is exactly what happened to us. So we're gonna have to start from the scratch again, but knowing all that we have learned from the previous years. So, and that's a tremendous gift if you can use it wisely. So what is the thing that you did before that were mistakes that now you don't need to do in order to achieve your goal? So COVID has allowed us to rethink the whole model, to rethink the way we were doing businesses, and not only to change processes, to speed up the process and to become more efficient and to automatize some tasks. Definitely, we're doing all this now. And to launch new products, actually, like entrepreneurial products, which I believe, and now that you're covering this in 3 years, is going to be bigger than Maria. Not only this, but most important change why we fail in the beginning, and the reason when we fail, sometimes there's nothing you can do about it. You don't figure out that much of that seems. But now in COVID,
Gemma, we're having an issue with your sound for whatever reason. So just kind of, I usually just, can you hold that thought and let me go to Matthew, and then when we come back, maybe it might have got better. So Andrei has I'm loving these questions, man. This is it's a dream of every professor to have somebody who asks questions. So Matthew, Andrei there has a question about teamwork and picking the people to work with, advice on recruiting, which, obviously is a great question. So what have been your learnings throughout that process? Start with like the founding team, what things you looked for in the founders, and then as you start to grow, start about the kind of people you're looking for.
I mean, founders, you really have to kind of know the strict minimum of people needed to start your company, and you have to make sure that they share the same vision, and that if times are going to get tough, because they will get tough, that they will still stay on the boat. They will not jump out of the boat and that's it. So I mean, it's better to have really difficult conversations as soon as possible, rather than postponing them and then not having them, and making sure that you're on the same level of of expectations from the company. Because, for instance, for my first company, I didn't have all these questions at the beginning, and at some point, it can, some of them can jump out of the boat, right?
Yeah. I have a phrase, Matthew, which is like, difficult conversations avoid difficult decisions. In other words, if you're prepared to have difficult conversations, then you don't get to a point where you have to make difficult decisions. So, very often people call me and they ask me like, what am I going to do about this? And I said, look, either begin to have difficult conversations, or else you're going to be faced with difficult decisions.
Yeah, no, and so talking about culture as well, I remember for this company, we started culture just the first week of we started the company. It was like, what the hell, right? Why are we talking about this kind of stuff so early? But I think 6 months later, it kind of, we agreed a few months ago that we were going to work this way, right? So it avoids complicated conversations later on, right? And in terms of employee, I think it's kind of the same thing, right? I tend to use always 3 questions while interviewing people. The first one is okay, what are you proud of having made in your life, right? So it shows that if people, have really experienced difficult stuff during their life, right? I mean, I don't care if this guy went to do Erasmus in Lithuania or whatever, when it's maybe a smaller country where they don't speak at all your language, or if they have done some weird kind of competition somewhere, right? It kind of proves that these people are willing to perform. The second question I always ask is, okay, what was your best mistake in life, right? In order to understand how they learn and how they reflect on having learned, right? Because doing startups, you don't know how the future is going to look like. And then my third question is, okay, what are you a freak of, right? Tell me how freaky you are about what, because this, you see the passion that people can put in your company, and you need to be passionate not to quit.
You can, there's three great questions. And, you know, sometimes you can tell a lot about a person by just asking them, like, you know, okay, like, how did you get here today for this interview? You know, like, did you come by bus? Did you walk? Did you arrive early? Like, you know, why those kinds of questions can tell you as much about somebody's asking kind of technical questions about their career and stuff. But
Yeah.
it is true that if you excel in one thing, like it generally, if you have the obsessive desire to excel in one thing, it generally suggests that you have that kind of obsessive desire which is going to be required to excel in another.
Yeah, and another question I'd like to do is to ask like candidates, I don't care the function they're going to have, to me as a guy, like to sell me a lipstick, right? And if it's a woman that's doing the interview, to sell her like a football shirt of Real Madrid, right? Just to check how people can sell, and if people ask a question or they don't ask any question. Because if they want to vomit on you, then it's just like, you know, you don't know how to sell, so it's going to be difficult for you to be able to sell anything, because entrepreneurship is about selling, right?
Yeah. No,
there is something that I am doing all the time now, and the key of COVID actually to us, holding my thought, Joe, is precisely this: who you hire. That to me is the most important thing that we should do, and we fail in some cases, and we didn't fail in others. And you know, I'm so sick of, you know, listening to people talk, but not seeing or watching their acts. So what we do now, we have changed the recruitment process completely. And what we do now is just cut the bullshit. Show me. Don't tell me that you're great, because, you know, I'm also a commercial guy. I can convince you of.
Shemai's out.
I think he got cut off.
Oh,
Okay.
I don't know what happened.
Okay, you're back anyway. Yeah, cut the bullshit was the last thing we heard out of your mouth. Cut the bullshit.
Cut the bullshit and share it to me. You know, I'm also a American. I can convince you that I'm a great guy. I know a lot of Africa. I don't know anything about Africa, but I could convince you in 30 minutes or in 3 hours. No. But what I cannot lie about is my actions. My action will always precede me, with investors, with banks, when you want to get loans to potential partners, employees, employers. So what we are doing, for example, now is we are making for candidates to sweat it a lot. I mean, we don't have money to pay much, and we do work a lot. And there is a lot of chaos here, but still we believe we are a great company to work for, or to work with. So if a candidate wants to be seen viewed by one of our team, he has to work a lot before he has spoken to one single person of our team, which means he has to read some emails that we create. He has to watch some videos that we create, and he has to send some videos that we create, that we ask for. It doesn't matter in which position. And what the reason why we do this, I shouldn't say this in recording, is because we wanna really feel how you are. I mean, how pumped you are about working with us. Because if right now, for example, you don't feel like recording a video for ourselves, if you don't feel like that when you need to cheer me up, how the hell are you gonna do it once you got the contract agreed? You're gonna come up with an excuse. Today I'm sick. Tomorrow I don't feel like it. The other day the task wasn't clear. And there is some concept that I recently discovered, and it's a book. I really recommend it. And the guy, I really love it, which is Jocko Willink, Extreme Ownership. I don't know if you guys know the book. It's a tremendous book, a tremendous guy, tremendous philosophy, which means be goddamn responsible for anything that you do and anything that you should be having control of, or you should have control of. And with different, and you need to, at least my opinion is, you need to hire this kind of people. And this kind of people, at least my feeling is, you don't get to know whether you are this type of people by asking questions. Because if the other person is, you know, average only smart, he will come up with some excuses, have prepared the interview well, so you won't feel it, you won't grasp it. But the way you can do is, okay, don't show me, don't tell me, show it to me, without me even asking it.
Interesting.
To me, that's key, and that's something that we will not change in the next years.
Yeah, I think particularly in a startup, you know, people need to be self-managing and self-motivating, you know, and they need to sort of like, if you have to be telling them what to do all the time, you know, that's not really going to work, and they should want to, you know, excel, and that's where the phrase is like, it's not for everyone, and it's not, but you know, I guess with the idea one day that they would set up their own company, I always think it's a great thing to say in an interview, saying like, one day in the future, I hope to set up my own company, because that shows that you're not afraid of responsibility and ownership. A lot of people just are afraid of responsibility and ownership. Like they never want to be like the founder or the CEO or whatever, whether it's a fear of failure or whatever it is. So it's quite a good thing to say that, you know, and especially if it's true, that, you know, like that you know, your idea really is to work in startups and learn how they work and those kind of things, and that someday you will set up your own company. I think that's something that more people should say. We're getting more and more questions now. Oh, I love anonymous attendee. You come to every Zoom conference I chat. It's amazing. So what are your views of going into business with friends? Given the challenge of startups, you see this as a positive, and can you talk through the risk of stopping with friendship? Okay, well, I'm going to answer that first, and then we'll get Matt and Chema to do it. Chema can talk about going into business with family as well, because he went into business with his sister. So that must have been fun, because I always tell people, like, don't go into business with your friends, because you need your friends more than you need your coworkers. And the other thing, of course, is that you very often have things in common with your friends, and that can clash. You know, the best thing to do is to have someone who's in love with products, someone who's in love with numbers, and someone who's in love with like operations or something, and then you guys don't clash. But if you're friends, you possibly like the same things, think the same things, so there could be a clash. But in life, you need friends more than you need co-founders. Friends are really valuable and important, and you should try and hold on to them for having friends, and then try and, you know, you don't have to, even if you think of a lot of football teams, you know, they'll often say that they weren't, they were very effective playing football together, but they weren't friends. But they had different qualities that worked together. But maybe Matt, I guess, is next to answer that one, and then Chema. Friends versus, I guess, non-friends.
Yeah, the thing is that, do you always like discuss like difficult conversations with friends, right? So in my first companies, for instance, amongst the 4 co-founders, two of them were best friends, and actually one was going to be the you know, the testigo, right? How do you say, the best man of the other one's wedding, and didn't happen so, right? So I mean, it can be very complicated. I mean, I think that you kind of have to be on the same line, but don't do it with your best friends. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah.
Because again, life is long, and your friend's going to be your friend for the rest of your life, right? Yeah. So, and maybe your partner will be your partner for 5 years, right? So it's like, as I used to say, right, in a maybe non-orthodox way nowadays, like founders is like getting married, but without sex, right? The fun part, right? So, so when it gets bad,
you always find a way to bring up sex in some way or other. It's like,
I'm French, Joe. Remember?
I was disciplined enough not to tell a dirty joke. So, but anyway, I guess very good. Okay, Chema, just again with your friends, and also just working with your sister, because I mean, you know, you guys worked very well together. Actually, she was often a useful person you know, she understood you quite well and stuff. So talk to me about those two things.
So I guess what Matthew said is absolutely right, in the sense of you need to find people, and also you said before, Joe, that can match you. No, I love strategic and business development, and you need to love processes, and you need to love financial and stacks. So as long as the first thing you need to do, this is my thought, is to find people who can complement you, no, to add value where you don't add value, no, or where you cannot add value, or where you don't want to add value. That's the first thing, without considering whether you're a friend or not a friend. If you don't pass that question, I wouldn't go to the second question. If you pass the first question, I guess the more you know that person, the better. And usually you know more your family and your friends, because you know you have more exposure to them. People say that they shouldn't go on business with family and friends because in case things go wrong, right? When things get nasty, you may have a problem there. Well, and yeah, I agree. But first of all, something that I consider is I hate statistics, and I believe that statistics don't apply to me. So 9 out of 10 cases, people don't work out well when they're family. But I mean, I am one person. It could be the 1/10. No?
Yeah.
And as long as you put you have enough data to make the decision, it could work. For example, myself, I'm working with my best friend, and also in this new company in Alter Home. He wasn't involved in the co-founding team. He went to work for a London company and make a big salary. And a few months, I called him. I said, "Buddy, we are creating something excellent here. I can barely pay you, but you need to quit London and come here." And he's right now like 10 feet from here. And also with my sister, no, which is my co-founder. So I disagree. I mean, I like the idea of working with friends because, you know, when we think about, we were launching in Panama until COVID, and I've been going to Panama the past 2 years by myself, and it's quite boring. And I say, well, couldn't it be great to have, you know, someone that you can share the experiences while working. Therefore, it's not that much of a work, but it's also life, no, or live. So if possible, I rather to work with friends than without friends. But you know, you definitely need to be careful.
I think that's the thing, though. I mean, I know how important trust is for you, and I think that's you know, something that you know, they talk about like trust, high trust and low trust societies. You know, that some cultures are very high trust, and they take a long time, you know, before they trust anyone, and then other cultures are much more kind of transactional. So I think that might be the way that if you're from a kind of high trust society, that you will value the fact that you can absolutely trust someone. And I think in life we all need to have somebody that we trust absolutely. I think it's a really useful thing to have. You know, I have a lot of mentoring and coaching conversations with people now, and you know, what people tell me sometimes is that the conversations are very, you know, I don't provide a lot of help at times, and the guy said, yeah, but you're the only person I can talk to. You know, I can't talk to my investors, I can't talk to my business partners, I can't talk to my wife. You know, there's nobody apart from you that I can be 100% open about. So that was a sort of a very interesting conversation. And you know, and you're just helping the person. Very often you're reassuring them. They know the answer themselves, but you're kind of reassuring them. So that's a sort of interesting question. Okay, so was there another question there, or what? I don't think so. Okay.
I think it was, I was Cecilia asking about the book that Chema
Oh,
mentioned.
yeah.
I just reply, Karina.
You
Extreme
just replied?
ownership.
He's totally on top of it. A super multi.
There is something that is also in the podcast. Every single day these days, I am watching a 2-minute video. That is this guy. He's a Navy SEAL, you know, Marine guy from the States, extremely big, huge, you know. Wow, but you know, he's also sensitive and smart. And he has a 2-minute video that says, well, sometimes my colleagues and so on, and when they tell me that they share with me issues, and I tell them, well, good. And one day, one of the guys told me, he says, you know, I have a tremendous problem, but I know already what you're gonna say. And the guy says, well, all right, what am I gonna say? And he says, you're gonna say good. And that video I play every day, because what he says, and that's something that most entrepreneurs must believe, is whatever happens to you, good. I mean, whatever, when bad things happen to you, because when good things happen to you, obviously it's good, no? Yeah. But when bad things happens to you, you gotta say good. Yeah. Good, because it's a way for you to learn, to improve, to get stronger.
And it's also turning bad things into an advantage, you know. Definitely. I mean, that's a skill as well. Very often I get something happens that in the short term is a real irritant or something, but then I say, okay, well, how do I turn this into an advantage? So I often come up with the names of 3 people that I had planned to call that I hadn't called, or something like that. So, you know, that's the actually the definition of an entrepreneur, which is someone who can turn a kind of something bad into something good, like the ability to do that. So I have a long list of stuff that happened to me, and at the time I wished it hadn't, but you know, in an overall sense, it forced me in directions that I probably wasn't going to go. I mean, there's this great thing called the FOG framework, and it talks about that most of us have the ability to do something, and most of us have the motivation to do something. But what a lot of people in their life lack is a prompt. So something has to happen to them to force them to do it. And then sometimes it can be something bad, like a divorce or a death in the family, or somebody losing money or something like that, that spurs them on. And that's okay. But you know, like for a lot of people, you say to them, okay, well, how can I have a prompt without something bad happen? It shouldn't be necessary that something bad happens in your life to force you to do that thing that you're kind of not doing. But I mean, you know, there's amazing, I often see like famous sports figures, and you know, they have a brother or a sister who is kind of looks like them and is exactly the same as them in all ways, but something happened to one of them in their life that kind of spurred them on to be a famous footballer or a tennis player, and something didn't happen to the other guy, you know. And you know, it's quite amazing because, you know, if they come from the same parents, they're very similar. So you know, this is my big thing now that I discuss with a lot of people about, like, the 2 things I discuss with everyone these days are SaaS business models or subscription business models, and also prompts. Like, how can you know, we know you have the ability, we know you have the motivation, but what does it take for something to happen in order for you to go forward with the course of action? And then, you know, we talk about that and what that might be. So that's kind of my sort of my magic word. Okay, so we have like 10 minutes left now, and I think the time has just flown very quickly. You know, who thought we would...
I have a question that maybe
Yes.
you guys can address. It has to do with maybe the speed of scaling up, going back to scaling up. So with everything, with technology is just advancing and developing at lightning speed, and someone would tell you that the obvious answer would be, yeah, you have to scale up as quickly as possible, take advantage, but really with the uncertainty of like the past 10 years, you never know. So what is the wise answer?
Oh God, no, it's exact worst advice, you know, like scaling. First of all, the big thing about scaling is that scaling is exponential and growth is linear. Okay, so you know, the very when like nature tells us that anything that grows quickly can collapse quickly. You know, if you look at like animals, you know, they try and force feed fish to make them grow quickly, they all die of disease. And you know, even fruit flies, you know, they grow really quickly and they die in a day. So you know, nature, there's this you know, Chinese philosopher says, you know, that you know, nature takes its time, but everything is accomplished. And it's something I've seen again and again with scaling, you know. And the vast majority of companies, you know, their real growth takes place after 10 years, you know, like, and even companies that are acquired, the vast majority of them, you know, that's when the growth occurs. And everyone wants to go more quickly and stuff like that. But I think actually, if you grow quickly, sometimes, you know, and that's what Gemma was talking about with the Great Reset, that, you know, he grew very quickly. Initially with the, you know, using the experience he had from his previous business, but there were things that he wanted to fix that he couldn't go back to, and that the only bright side of the COVID situation is that now he can kind of do some resetting on issues. But scaling is, you know, you grow by exponentially 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and you know, whereas growth is linear, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So the thing is that you spend a lot of time in the pre-product market fit stage trying to position yourself for exponential growth. So take your time early on. There's a friend of mine who's well, I always say there's a friend of mine. That usually means there's a former student of mine. That's who it is. It's a student, and he's doing an edtech startup. And you know, I was saying to him, listen, it'll be 9 months of research, really, you know, validating and stuff like that. And he was like, he wanted to start writing code because he had like the MBA mentality of like, you know, just open the PowerPoint and like get it done, you know, because something else is coming. And I was like, not really, you know. I said it can take you, like, I see a lot of people not really fully researching the market, before they write a line of code. And I said, look, you're going to, if you write code now, you'll just end up throwing it away. And if you believe that's progress, I don't think you're right there. So that's the point about scaling, that first of all, you need to have a pre-scale mentality. The idea of like, you don't have a startup, you have like a pre-scale up. But that's also true that you have to spend a long time experimenting, and you can't, like, the market will tell you when you're ready. You don't decide to scale. It's when the market are banging down your door. That's when you're like, okay, now it's time to go. And you can't force, if you try and force it very often, you're forcing it, but the actual, you haven't found the product market fit. You haven't got that sense that, like, literally, if you tried to take your product away from someone, they would say, I can't live without it. What do you think, Matt?
No, I agree 100%. Like, go slow. It's like a baby, You cannot ask a baby who doesn't even know how to stand up to run, right? So
yeah,
as Didac Lee, one of my mentors, used to say, the difficult thing is to know when to do the correct thing at the correct time, right? And at the beginning, you have to say no to many things, right? So I completely agree with what you just said, Joe.
Yeah, and it's so hard. Again, I mean, that's why scaling. That's why so many people. If you think. That's why so few companies scale. I mean, first of all, is the ability to double down on what's working is difficult to do. But the second thing is they try and force it. They make themselves believe something is true. Like, they torture the data until the data confesses. They could.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah. So
I think they know they're pivoting when they already started scaling up, and then they know that they're in the wrong
listen, I have, I mean, in my elective in the IMBA, like, one of the guest speakers, that was one of the things they saw again and again. Like, they were like, here comes another person to tell us not to prematurely scale. And that's one of the things I say, which is to say, listen, it's only when you're sick of telling me something that the message has got through, right? So it's a sort of like, it's almost like a running joke, because nearly all of them said that they got too excited about the idea, and then they suddenly started opening offices or hiring people, before they were ready to that person's skills were appropriate for the business. And entrepreneurs are often optimists. In fact, that's one of the transitions from starting to scaling. Like, you have to try and when you're beginning, you have to be a total optimist. You have to believe the glass is half full. But when you're scaling, you actually have to switch that and become a pessimist into a kind of a what can go wrong. And not everyone has the ability to have kind of both sides, because in a startup situation, you have a small number of customers. If something goes wrong, it's not the end of the world. But if you have a big amount of customers and the thing breaks or something like that, they could actually be a big problem. So, this is why, and this is the whole paradox of everyone talks about startups or corporations. No one talks about the part in the middle, which I think is easily the most exciting kind of area, because you have the dynamism of a startup, but you also have, you have some resources and things. You're not totally in a kind of a one-bedroom apartment trying to survive. But yeah, I mean, even I remember a guy, Ben from Packlink, talking to me about, like, he said it was like cholesterol. There's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol, and he said, like, that was basically the process of product market fit was kind of, to work out which were the really good customers where you had good margins and repeat business, versus which were the customers that he was fulfilling but not making a lot of money from. And he said that process, he said we hired one guy, he took a look at our data, and that was the first thing he said, which is to say, like, you have to try and separate the customers that or have with the good margins, and that took a while, because until they had the customers, they couldn't then work out which were the best ones. So yeah, absolutely, it's a great thing you mentioned that, because everyone tries to go too fast and tries to force it, and usually it all ends in tears.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you.
So we have 5 minutes left. So I think, have we answered all the questions, or does someone hate me for life? Okay. So just kind of last words, kind of final thoughts, and perhaps Whoops, there's loads and loads of questions that I don't know, did I see them wrong? So 5 minutes just to once again to pitch your startups, Matt. Where can we find you? How can we help you? What are you doing? You know, you have an elective as well, I think, don't you? You have a class or something?
Yeah, I do teach first actually lecture of the MBA, entrepreneurial mindset. And then I do participate in lots of, well, they call me all the time, right? And like you called me last week or whatever, and I tend to say yes. So what I'm doing, I'm doing a set of virtual clinics. You can find it at amaclinics.com. Ama is the mum in Basque, right?
Matthew's wife is from the Basque Country. Congratulations, by the way. Anna's pregnant again. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, according to Instagram, she is anyway. So
second one under the way. I'm just like I wanted to be beta tester of my solution, so I just went full in, right? No, actually, I'm still in the Basque Country right now doing the interview. So so that's about it.
Very good. Okay, and the same I think for Chema. Just repeat your company's name. Tell us where people can find you, and anything you need. What's the perfect email you would like to get tomorrow? What things are you looking for?
We only have 2 minutes left, Joe. So my company is called Alter Home. If you have an apartment, or you have a building, or you have a small hotel that you think that it could generate more revenue than the one it's currently doing, you can drop us an email to info@alterhome.es and tell us about what you have, and perhaps we can help you. Anything, we always more than happy to help in anything I can do. So please don't hesitate to contact me for anything. I mean, if there is someone there looking for job opportunities, drop me a line. More than happy to listen to you guys.
Okay, and then I guess the final thing that we want to do, and I know we have only a minute left, I think, to manage the transition, just in terms of the things that you brought from your previous companies, that what are the things you're definitely not going to do again this time that you did last time? Matt first.
Well, not spending time on things that are not worth, that the market is not accepting. So if you think that you have dog food, but the dogs are not eating your food, then just, try to repeat again until you find food that dogs want to eat.
Yeah. That's one of the things. I mean, that's one of the reasons why older entrepreneurs are often better. That you're as you get older and as you move more companies, you're more honest with yourself. Perhaps when you're starting off, now you just see this and you need to move on, and that's really it. No messing around. Like if someone behaves badly, you fire them. If something isn't working, similarly, and that's like I can remember like how you agonized over firing people, and like I think I think you'd be far more you would do it without having so much guilt. And Chema also. Then I see Alejandro has turned up, so that's quite good. So he's the next speaker. So Chema also, I mean, obviously you mentioned this idea of that you can't have a second captain. But what do you think? What things from your previous company that you've done differently this time?
Well, even better the answer on my next company. What I will do better. I'm gonna focus more in the important tasks. I'm going to focus on efficiency, and I'm going to be true to ourselves. So you put the very right example. We were debating a lot whether we should fire this person or not for so long time. And now, if you are true to yourself, either you are aligned or you are not. If you're aligned, let's go with you. If you're not aligned, let's not. So and that can be applicable to processes, to which technology to use, in-house, externalize. So become efficient from day one. Focus and true to your values.
Okay, fantastic. So with that, the time is up. I just want to say thank you to Chema and also to Matt for turning up, and I really enjoyed the conversation, and it's always great you know, the world needs entrepreneurs, and then you guys are absolutely that. And also thank you to the Entrepreneurship Club, to Anna, to Carmina, to both of you. I hope it's been super interesting. And I always plug my elective because, you know, without an elective, I hope to see those of you, I think it's April now when it will be next. And this is basically what we do. We just come in with guest speakers and we chat about entrepreneurship. And I think that's the best way
so
to
you'll see us around again, right?
Yeah. You can't get rid of us. You know, like it's like, but Matt, remember what I said? It's only when you're sick of hearing something that the message has got through, right? You know, that's what we say. So I'll hand over then to Anna. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you very much, guys, for the interesting session.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye.
So let's continue. Now we are having a great session with Alejandro Torino. Alejandro, he's a managing partner at Yesija. It's a law company. Alejandro has more than 10 years of experience in IT law, intellectual property, innovation, entrepreneurship law. And he has been acknowledged by Chambers and Partners and Legal 500. Like these are leading rankings in the law industry as an outstanding lawyer in intellectual and industrial property and new technologies. He has been elected by Financial Times among the 10 most innovative lawyers in Europe and listed by Forbes among the 100 most creative people in business. He has been awarded twice by Iberian Lawyer with the top 40 and the 40 prize. And now he will be giving us a session. How to choose the jurisdiction for startups. It will be coordinated by our coordinator, Alejandro Jose Amaya. Alejandro Torino, welcome. Can you start your video, please?
I am trying. Okay, I'm ready now. Can you see me?
Yes, perfect.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Yeah, fine, thank you. Thanks so much for inviting me to this.
I'm giving it to Alejandro. He will be coordinating you during the session.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
So good night, everyone. I hope you're doing well. Today, as Anna told you, we're having a talk with Alejandro Torino. If you have any questions, don't forget to write them down on the Q&A.
Okay, so perfect. Thank you so much for the introduction. Let me share a very brief presentation that I will be using. Hopefully you can see it right now. Well, I just was requested to speak about how to choose a jurisdiction for your startup. And this is something, as Anastasia mentioned, I have been working in innovation issues for many years now. Some of the topics that I usually address to clients is regarding innovation matters, regarding, of course, from the legal perspective, also IP matters and so on. But always there is one starting point, which is where should I incorporate my business and where should we start our business. Sometimes in an international environment like IE, we meet people from many places worldwide and say, hey, we met in Madrid, so let's start in Madrid. Is that the reason? Well, probably not. I mean, probably the best decision on where to incorporate is not based on the place where you are. There are some other elements that should be taken into consideration when doing that work. Being said that, I also can state that once you take a decision on where to start, you can make some amendments in the future, and also you can change in the future. I will let you know some situations where we have been assisting clients, some very relevant ones, very well known for you, where they started, for instance, in Spain, and they did some kind of flip to Delaware, or they moved to California for several reasons. But my focus here and my idea is trying to what questions we should make ourselves in order to answer how to choose jurisdiction for my startup. Okay, and I have divided the session very briefly, and of course feel free to interrupt me as many times as you want. I would like to divide the session in like 3 different claims. First one is the market claim. I should offer products or services to a market which is looking for that product or service. Second topic, which is a very well-known one, is I want to get some income turnover from that business, and it means and represents that the tax regime should be good for myself, for the partners, for the investors, and so on. And finally, which sometimes is not very well understood, is that you need to fit the business within the existing regulation. And I will try to put on the table many examples that we have seen in the market, where we identify several agents who are very successful in one jurisdiction and are not in some other jurisdiction. If you are, for instance, a rider company, like let's say Uber Eats, like Deliveroo or Globo, and you operate in California, okay, you can be very happy. You got a new regulation saying, hey, those guys working for you are not employee, are self-employed, and it means a much more benefit for you. But the same business in Spain could face a very different regulation with very different consequences. And of course, before starting, you should take into consideration those circumstances. It doesn't mean to say, no, I cannot start in Spain. Yeah, you can, but you must be aware of the challenges, the pros and cons on incorporating in one place or the other. Okay, so based on that grounds, I would like to start with the marketing claim, which is basically two questions: where are my clients, and where can I get funds? Where are my clients? This is not, I mean, I'm a lawyer, I am not a consultant, I do not provide consultancy services for clients in terms of where to do business or not. This is not my business. My business is the legal matter. But one prior question to that, without or out of the legal scenario, is you need to focus in one place where your clients are. And sometimes this is also interesting to know that for providing several services or products to one specific country, you should be established in that country. So this is something that, again, is quite focused and linked to the legal issues. What does it mean? It means that, okay, I would like to run some kind of bakery industry in Spain, but since the tax regime is not good, I would prefer to be in Ireland. Well, it doesn't matter that you pick another jurisdiction, because you will probably find a link existing in the existing law or established by the relevant authorities, tax authorities in this case, saying it doesn't matter if you're in Ireland, you will be paying taxes in Spain. So, but first thing is, hey, where are the people I would like to address my products and my services? This is common sense, but maybe that would be the first question. Second question, which is very relevant, is where can I get money from? I mean, at the very beginning, and you know that even better than me, the way to get some funds is family, full and friends, some kind of business angels. But there is one specific moment at the, the cycle of life of a startup where you should look for bigger figures in terms of funding. In those cases, also taking that in mind, it is very relevant. We see, and I guess I'm sure that some of the speakers of this event are founders of very relevant startups, but taking some information from the press, this is not confidential at all. I see, for instance, how companies, startups like Sporthome, they can raise 40 million in the US. Well, this is very good news. This is very good news. A Spanish company or Spanish founders are getting money in those, from very relevant money from very interesting venture capitals. Of course, you can get access to this money or to these funds being established in Spain. or in some other jurisdiction. But at the end of the day, in practical terms, we see many times as in case you want to get access to this interesting investing rounds, getting in touch with this kind of VCs, the best way to approach them, and sometimes even a requirement to get invested, to be invested by them, is by means of having a corporate in the US. We got several clients who started being a Spanish company and later on say, hey, now we need to reach different money. We need to approach to VCs, and the only way that, or the requirement that they are compelling me to go through is incorporating a company in the US. Again, this is possible. You can create some kind of model company in the US. That company is the one getting the money. There could be like a cost company or I mean a productive company in a country where you have no benefits, and through a nice design tax structure, you can not only have access to these funds, but also to pay as legally less taxes that would be possible. Okay, so have this in mind. And also one additional point. Let me share one example. One of our clients and a startup which they are an e-sport company. They are an e-sport team. They are playing some Spanish and European leagues, but at one specific moment, they wanted to play some leagues in the US. For doing so, what the league is requesting them is to have an incorporated company in the country. So for one reason or the other, we should look at what the market is asking us for, where the client is, where the money is, and also checking if there is any kind of bureaucracy or some other requirements, as the e-sport example I have already mentioned, that could be interesting or could be needed to follow to go through that. Okay, that could be like the first point. Second point, which is probably the most important and the most asked question when meeting with a startup, is the tax claim or the tax issue. It is possible to establish a company, a brick and mortar company in Spain for providing services in Spain? Answer would be normally yes. Could we do the same, but for providing our products or services abroad? Probably answer is yes. And what about the other way around? May we incorporate abroad and provide services in Spain or any other country? Probably answer would be yes too. But irrespective of the fact that you can establish whatever you want, apart from several sectors or regulation defining some concerns on that, I can, for instance, incorporate in any company, in any country in the European Union and provide freely services in any other jurisdiction in the EU. This is correct, but it doesn't matter that the laws and the requirements that you will need to comply with be only those corresponding to the place where you incorporate. Let's go to practical examples. Me and my friends would like to incorporate or to run an e-commerce or a marketplace. Okay, perfect. I would like to incorporate to start a business for doing some kind of marketplace for second-hand purchase and sale or whatever. And we say, hey, where can we incorporate? And say, hey, we don't need a physical place where to operate. Actually, it will be an online business, and we love to do it from Ireland, for instance. What's the reason for us to move from Ireland? Basically, the tax regime. I will share this presentation with you if you are interested in that. But this is basically a table where you can see the figures of the tax regime affecting to the main countries where you can incorporate a company. Okay, so if I am free to choose between paying 25% tax income in Spain, or corporate tax, I mean, or paying 12.5 in Ireland, I will probably pick the Irish case because it will represent that I will be paying half of the taxes in that jurisdiction. Without, I mean, or irrespective of that, we also take care of how we proceed in that way, and also checking if that structure would be okay and would be adequate for my purposes. As I mentioned, in very gross terms, incorporating a company in Ireland for providing online services to EU citizens would be okay, and probably that would be relevant or I mean convenient to pay taxes in Ireland. That's it. But what about a case where I create some kind of holding company in Ireland, but I am distributing or having physical shops in one place or the other? Well, we need to take care and to be very cautious on how we move forward with all the tax topics, because being or having our holding company in Ireland or our only company in Ireland will probably not mean that my taxes will be paid in Ireland, because there are some links defined by several or different tax regulations at the European Union, saying, hey, if you address your products or your services to one specific country, you got a physical presence here, and you are operating the business from here, then you will be paying taxes here in Spain and not in Ireland. So be careful with that. That require, I'm not a tax lawyer. Every time that we advise a client on where to incorporate, the tax topic is crucial, but also let me share some, some kind of moments where we have been invited by clients saying, hey, we'd like to go to Ireland. Well, be careful with that, because operating from Ireland could be great, or from the Malta or from some other countries could be great, but bear in mind that sometimes even being incorporated in some place, you will need to comply with the laws of the destination place. And also there are some situations where incorporating in those kind of very beneficial places would not make sense for the company, depending on the specific income that they will be getting in the present time or in the near future. Okay, well, let me share some kind of some kind of view on that. This is like I don't want to be so very rude on that, but if you check the tax regime existing, for instance, at European level, you can even identify that some of them could represent even unfair competition. And actually, this is a real competition between countries. What's the reason for Ireland or for the UK or for Luxembourg or for the Netherlands to have a more beneficial tax regime? Basically because they want to attract as many companies as they can, paying less money there, but operating from different places or from their countries to different jurisdictions and territories. There is not a unique tax regime at European level, not even worldwide, and we need to be careful on all these differences between one place and the other, and take the right decision considering the situation where we are. Okay. And let me finally, and before I finish my intervention, I would love to, to discuss with you or to answer any question that you may have with regard to what I usually call like fitting the regulation, which is the legal claim. Let's go back to this Uber example I was mentioning earlier. If I want to run delivery service where I want to hire people to do some kind of work, should I take into consideration existing regulation in the country? Definitely yes. And one specific business can be legal in one country and can be fully illegally in some other jurisdiction. And this is something that we also be very careful about. I got also many clients which provide or which conduct some kind of scouting activity. Okay, so mainly they go to very innovative places like the US, mainly California, or they go to Israel or Singapore or Estonia or something like this, and they check what some kind of scouting, who is doing what, and say, hey, I will copy that idea and I will bring that idea to my specific country. That would be a business plan. There's no query on my side on that, but be careful that after you identify one business idea and you want to transfer that business idea to one specific country, you need to check if that business will be legal in the country. Or let me say that in a different way. You need to check if addressing your products or your services to that country will mean and represent that you will need to comply with the legal requirements of that country. In general terms, and this is something I have brought here for you to know, two main, let's say, like two main concerns that we should identify. And probably I will be able to share that more clearly if I do with an example. Let's think about one company, or let's go to the real case. This is the Google case. The Google case is the following one, existing at European level, and the European Court of Justice issued a resolution saying something that we will address later on. But the question here was, hey, Google is providing a search engine service worldwide. Basically, it doesn't matter if I am in Spain, in the US, or wherever, I can access, or nearly everywhere, I can access Google. I enter google.com, I type blah, 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 and I get some results. Okay? Well, in Spain, in 2014, some kind of it, one individual made some kind of ego surfing. He typed his name and found out several results saying, hey, some links with some snippet where you got some information with regard to himself. Okay, one of the or couple of those links were not updated. They contain information that was not true anymore, or that was old-fashioned. This guy was very concerned about that and said to the specific media that published that content, hey, delete that content. And the media said, no, that was true at a certain point of time, and I will not change that content. Okay, the guy said, hey, I will ask Google to delete the link linking me to that place where they say those horrible things about me. But that worked true in the past. So Google say, no, I will not delete that because this is a technical issue that is technical, and I'm not going to enter that. Well, but this guy say, hey, Google, you should delete that because the Spanish legislation on data protection permits me to request deleting that content. And Google say, well, I am a US company. I operate this business from the US, and I will not comply with the Spanish law. Well, this case went, this is a real one, went through a very complex litigation at European level. And in 2014, the Court of Justice, the European Court of Justice, stated that Google needed to comply with Spanish laws since they had a permanent establishment, a company, a subsidiary in Spain, operating that business from Spain. It doesn't matter if the search engine is in the US. If you offer that search engine service to the clients that are in Spain and you got a physical, let's say, address or a permanent company in Spain, you will need to comply with that law. And this is very relevant because it changed the view of many international companies who were happy to comply with their laws the laws of the countries where they were established, but not the laws of the countries where they address their products or services. So in that case, this resolution was very relevant and was like the starting point for many multinational companies to start complying with local laws. In addition to that, we should also bear in mind one key point here is, apart from this matter I have already mentioned, there is another one, which is consumer law. In those cases, and this is something that we got with many clients at the office, in those cases where you are dealing with, in a B2C model, where you got customers, individual ones, which are not professionals, let's say that, you need probably to comply with the laws of those specific countries. What does it mean in practical terms? That if you are an Irish company offering a website where you sell products or you offer some kind of video content from your location in Dublin, but you offer those products or services to Spain, and you address on a specific way, as the European Directive on E-commerce says, on a specific way to one specific country or individuals, you will need to comply also with the laws of those individuals. So there is like a, like a sum up for this matter. I would like to say, to keep some minutes for questions in case you got some. Before you choose the right place to incorporate, you need to be counseled. You need to you need to speak to those people that may help you to ask the relevant questions in order to take the right decision. Think about where your clients are, where you can get money from investors or whatever, where is the most beneficial tax regime for you, and finally, this fit in the regulation, meaning that you should be clear on what will be the laws that will be applied to you. As a bad example of how or what not to do, I am assisting now one client that was like in a trendy moment saying, hey, let's do this flip to Delaware. So we got a holding company in Delaware, all the money in Delaware. We now want to bring the money to Spain, and there is a tax issue on that. So they built a few years ago, following this trend, like a big empire, and now probably they will need to pay a lot of taxes because the tax structure was not very well defined. Well, this is the most important slide, saying thank you. I am just 10 seconds over my time, but open to discuss or to address any question you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, for this insightful talk about jurisdiction of startups. And I think we have time for the two questions that rise up. The first one is, what about choosing jurisdiction for a global venture capital fund? Do you recommend parallel subsidiary funds in different locations on one fund? Example given, Delaware.
Okay, Well, this is not an easy question to answer in 30 seconds or 1 minute. And it will depend, of course, of many topics in considering which is the business, what kind of funds you would like to reach, and also the stage where the startup is, okay? Again, there is a saying that I love. Of course, I am not impartial on that, but saying, put a lawyer in your life. I mean, before taking this kind of decision, you should ask where to do it. There is no unique answer to that. Say no, create a holding company and subsidiaries. It will depend on the business, on the business plan, and many other topics on the table.
Thank you very much. And the last question, written by Tomas Pulido, says, can you explain differences on C Corp and B Corp and other common legal companies structure for startups?
Wow. Again, I mean, I love when I am involved in this kind of events where there are approaches to startups from many, for different angles. When we speak about the legal matter, there is a con on our side. That means that we can only advise with regard to one specific jurisdiction. Let me explain. When you are counseling a startup from the financial perspective or from the business perspective, you will probably can do like a global approach. When we speak about a legal matter and say, hey, what kind of vehicle should I use for conducting that business? Every jurisdiction has its own different structures, and for instance, in Spain, we got like SL, Sociedad Limitada, also SA, Sociedades Anónimas, and some other regimes that we should also consider when taking this kind of decisions. When you are planning to create a holding company or a regional company in the US, you probably need to do exactly the same. That is speaking to people who is, I mean, even ourselves, when we advise a client on a different jurisdiction, we take the opinion and the legal advice from lawyers qualified and admitted in the specific bar. Okay.
Thank you very much, Alejandro, for giving your time to us. We really thank you for being
My
here.
pleasure. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you.
Bye. Okay, so as a next speaker, we have the pleasure to have Mr. Miguel Arias. I don't know if he's here.
Hi folks, I'm here. I cannot start my video. It says the host is blocking it, so maybe you need to give me some kind of permissions. Okay. No, I can't. Hey,
okay,
how are you doing?
Perfect. Hello, how are you?
Good.
Well, thank you very much for being here with us. It's a pleasure to meet you. Well, to start off, Miguel Arias has more than 17 years of experience in building technology-based startups with global reach. Nowadays, he works as a global entrepreneur director at Telefónica in the creation of connections with international entrepreneurship ecosystems all the way from Europe to Latin America. He's responsible for Telefónica's seed stage investment through Wire 2. Well, today he will be describing the open innovation arm of Telefónica and sharing his experience in the field. Feel free to start whenever you want.
Wonderful. Great. Let me see if I can share my screen. That should work nicely. You let me know when you see it, okay?
Yeah, we can see it. We can see it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I need to thank you to still being alive at 8 p.m. at night. So my promise, well, my I don't know, my challenge is to keep you awake for the next 40-60 minutes. And to do that, please stop me with any questions, any comments. I would like to give you some ideas on what I'm doing, my experience. But if this gets a conversation, it will be so much better, right? So please stop me if needed, right? And first of all, let me tell you in 5 minutes my entrepreneurial journey, right? Really quick. And and because I think it might be useful for students as yourselves, right? So I started as a civil engineer, my career, because at the time in Spain, we were talking about the boom in construction. So if you were more or less good with maths, you studied civil engineering. And once you were a civil engineer, you worked for the biggest civil engineering company in Spain, which was Dragados. And I did so. And I was there under a bridge, and I got my first realization in life, which is tied to a very specific law, which is the law of gravity. And that law of gravity says that things tend to fall down. I didn't like this very much, being under a bridge, right? So I thought maybe I'm not cut to be a civil engineer, and I thought I need to change, right? And thinking about what to do with my life, because I was actually following exactly the path which was defined for me by society, my parents, everybody, right? So first you study prestigious studies, then you go to the biggest possible firm doing so, and then I thought, well, I'm gonna go and study an MBA, right? So, and I studied at IE. IE is my alma mater, right? I teach the tool entrepreneurship. So I said, I'm gonna be doing an MBA, and maybe I become a highly paid executive traveling through the world, and that might be my destiny, right? Flying first class to the world. And I think the MBA was great to keep me like different suits to put on for different situations, right? But it was not giving me the answers I needed. I wanted to do something else. So what I did, I started my first gig as an entrepreneur. And we did everything wrong, as you can imagine, right? I mean, we were 4, so an even number of partners, and not complementary at all doing the same things, all engineers. And we had an amazing idea. That was the only thing we had. Our amazing idea was to organize services for international students coming to live to Madrid. We call it Mad Year, so year in Madrid, but also crazy year. And we thought it was amazing as a name. And we did that, and we did amazing parties. If I have to tell you, what we ended up doing was great parties. We had lots of fun, but it was not exactly a scalable, repeatable business model, right? So it was not a big success. So we had to pivot. At the time, it wasn't even called pivot. This is 2004 and 5, and we had a second idea, which was to do physical job fairs in Spain, and it was the boom of employment in Spain. So we started to organize all these events and you know the ones that happen in IE University, so or IE Business School. So we did all these kind of events, and that was very successful at the time. We did this all around Spain, reaching more than 40 universities, 40, so more than 500,000 students every year. And suddenly we had a company that was working, right? My mom started to talk again about me in Christmas dinner, right? She was saying, this crazy guy who left his career as a civil engineer to become, I don't know, a party organizer now, suddenly has a company with 35 people. It's making around 3 million euros a year in revenues. Life was nice, right? But then the crisis came, the financial crisis came, 2008. And we were in the middle of employment, right, for graduates and big corporates. So there was a big disaster. We had no business anymore, no market fit. So we went down rapidly, like a plane crashing into the field, and we had to lay off, more than, I don't know, for the 35 or more than 25 people, big friends who suddenly could not work with us anymore. A hard learning that I wish I had not learned at the time, and we thought we were going to just disappear. But the year before, we had started to move our physical events into virtual events. That rings a bell now, right? But that was 2008. So we were mimicking Second Life into the web, and that was very successful. We started doing virtual events for employment, for many other things. We did more than 400 events, and suddenly we grew up, mostly outside of Spain, and we hired a lot of engineers and designers. We bought a table tennis table, critical if you want to be a real entrepreneur. And with all of that, growing rapidly, what happened, and this nice thing is that, well, this is our third big idea, right? The virtual job first, is that we ended up being acquired by the leading webcasting startup at the moment. That was the year that Zoom started. So I'm now really killing myself because we didn't sell to Zoom. We sold to another competitor of Zoom, On24, a big startup in the Valley. To give you a thought, right? We had a startup from Madrid at that time, making again around 3 million euros in revenues, mostly virtual, around 40 employees, and we had raised zero euros. Well, 3,000 euros that we put in to start the company, right? That was our total bootstrapping raising story. And our competitor had raised over 50 million euros. He was having revenues of 100 million euros and around 500 employees. So it was a natural move for us to sell to them, to integrate with them, to learn how to be Americans, which is pretty tough. And I know that was it. So I did that, and for a few years I worked on integration. Then I finished my lockout period. I convinced my wife to take one sabbatical. That was my big dream, 1 year to work in, to not work actually, in London or in New York. And on my second weeks of the sabbatical, I got like an invitation from 2 of my former colleagues at Imaste. And these two bastards had left Imaste to found their own company, right? If you see somebody like me, if you see an idiot like me doing a company and being successful, then you get enticed and motivated to do it yourself. They did, they were successful, they were growing, and they asked me to join them. There were like 14 people at a time. And when you are asked to take a seat in the rocket ship, you just take it, you don't ask why. So I was happy to become the chief operating officer of the company, doing everything which was not product related, sales, marketing, organization, as a matter of fact. And the story was very nice. We grew rapidly. We raised over 40 million euros by the likes of Axel, Venture Partners, Salesforce Ventures, also in Spain, Kiva Ventures, and a few others. We grew the company over 10 million ARR, 120 employees, headquarters in New York. I was commuting back and forth New York, Madrid for 4 years, which is not so nice, I have to say. It's a lot of traveling. And it was a location intelligence startup, still is one of the key successes in the Spanish ecosystem of the last years. And we had lots of fun, a very great story. And after 4 years of doing so, we had hired all the VPs that you need to grow at scale and become a scale up, and all the very experienced US-based executives. So I thought, what could be my next stage? What could I do? And this is how I joined Telefonica. And I'm going to tell you just a bit about that now in the talk, right? I hope that this bit of a 5 minutes detour is helpful to understand. First, two things I would say. One is that entrepreneurship is a roller coaster. You never know, right? I mean, I told you now a story where everything tends to make sense. Reality is when you are in each of the stages, you have no idea what's coming next. So you just take leaps of faith, and you need to manage the uncertainty. That's a critical thing for entrepreneurs, and make bold bets on a future you don't know. And that may as well lead to success as to failure. The line between both of them is super, super thin. And normally we are biased because we hear people who have been successful somehow. But there are so many other stories where just like that, with the same talent, you didn't have luck to go, right? Yeah. So, and over time, I became also a business angel. That's a very expensive hobby that I have, and I love to support some companies, mostly because I get involved and I learn about apps or about I don't know, the advertising industry, etc., etc. And now I invest through Telefonica, through Wire. And just moving a bit forward on what I'm doing now. I mean, I lead teams in 10 different countries, overseeing globally the open innovation activities and the seed stage investment activities of the group, right, with all the operators. And I have to say that we've seen tremendous change over the last months, right? I mean, of course, the pandemic has had a tremendous impact. But more than just the pandemic, I think that what we've seen is that there is a very big change around tectonic, how do you say that? Sorry, a tectonic shift on different, how do you say that? Plaques? I don't get the English word now. Around the tectonic layers are moving around the industry, and we have seen now AI becoming of age, right? With being used now from a commercial perspective. We've seen IoT being deployed, right? All these things which are connected to the internet and also intelligent thanks to AI. And we've seen blockchain enabling all these distributed layer of computing and storing of data. And we are now seeing 5G, hopefully the next 1 year or two, that enables super low latency and at the same time enormous broadband. And all of that is creating a tremendous perfect storm for disruption, where if you are not really quick to change and to innovate, you will be disrupted yourself, right? And that's clear. And what we're trying to do at Telefonica is see how we can help the big corporations through that, right? How we can help them with finding innovation around the outer ecosystem. And I hear a lot that this is very similar to 2008, right? Like, again, a crisis, and the crises are big moments to start companies. I don't agree. I think crises are a shitty moment to start a company because there's less funding, much higher risk aversion by everybody. But it's true that I was mentioning this tectonic shift that happened in now, and it's happening now in 2020, and something similar happened in 2008. It was not the crisis, it was the massive move into this very smart pieces of hardware that are mobile phones, right? And it was the coming of these location-based services, which enabled things like Uber or Airbnb, etc. And these two together created this perfect storm of disruption. And I do think that now we are also living a similar storm of this perfect storm, right? So I do think something might happen, and it's a good moment, not because of the crisis, but because of the technology shift. And I would like to talk a lot lately is not about the new normal. I like to talk more about the new than the normal, right? So what has changed that we're enabled now to find new avenues for growth and for innovation? And we at Telefonica, we're trying to find what we could call anti-fragile startup. This is a term you might know, right? If you have read the book by Nassim Taleb, right? There are startups, organizations that when the contour conditions change, they thrive, right? Because they're very resilient and they can adapt and they can find growth even when it seems that is less likely. And for us, we are trying to find this kind of anti-fragile startups which are living in this massive digitalization and these changes on behavioral patterns in these specific areas, right? From cloud, mostly cloud for sure, right? To connectivity, which is our core, to cyber, which is now exploding both at home and in the professional environment, ed tech, which now is almost, I would say, just tech. It's just ed, not without even the tech, because it's just everywhere. For sure, IoT wearables with a strong angle around e-health and health as a whole, and age tech opportunities, and everything that is tied to the new ways to handle the industry, 4.0 with 5G, and around logistics and mobility. So we are very, very bullish around all these things. And I would love to just say that all the business that will really weather better disruption now are the ones who rely on cloud services, who sell always in-demand products, or products that make business be more digitally efficient, right? Which are easily discoverable online and which can serve customers with limited contact. So I think, guys, if any of you are gonna try to start a company right now, this is a very interesting way to put it. Try to at least fill some of these boxes I just mentioned. If you don't fill any of them, maybe you should rethink your strategy, right? And what we do here is that we have a very capillary approach in Telefonica, right? We're having 7 physical open innovation hubs, wider hubs in key cities from Sao Paulo to Munich, London, Spain, all around ISPAM, and more than 35 open future hubs where we work with regional governments and regional bodies to have a much more on-the-ground approach, helping wannabe entrepreneurs who are just starting, right? And of course, me being an entrepreneur and just always building things from scratch my whole entire life, I'm amazed by the privilege that is to be working at the scale of Telefonica, right? I mean, big teams, and if you go to, I don't know, Sao Paulo and you see how big Vivo, which is the operator that we have there is, or I don't know, Movistar in Buenos Aires, you're just amazed by the scale and the impact you can be having, right? So of course we have invested in many companies, almost 1,000, but the number I'm most proud of is that more than 140 are working with Telefonica today. And that's our main goal. I'm not talking about a POC, a pilot. I'm talking about real commercial engagements which are driving value for the company, for Telefonica, but very importantly, for the startup too, right? And so I think there's a very important angle for us, how we do that, right? Because we want to be this very global connected network of the hubs, which are scouting, finding entrepreneurs, and able to bring those to the other places around the world where Telefonica is present. The connections around the different hubs is very important to us. And what we mostly do as an open innovation arm is these key activities, right? So first we try to find the companies as an innovation scouter for the whole group in these areas of interest that I mentioned before, right? Which is not always easy because sometimes a big learning is that we are not the best looking guys or girls in the disco, right? I mean, you might think you're Telefonica, people would like to work with you. In the startup world, now there's a tremendous amount of money, different kind of VCs, business angels, etc. So you need to really bring your value proposition into the game. And ours is joint business development, that we help them to generate business, which you see is the third activity that we focus on after we invest as a micro corporate venture capital. Then there's another thing we do, which is we expose our own technology into the ecosystem, similarly to Amazon Web Services was doing, or Azure with Microsoft, which is trying to make our entrepreneurs be aware that we have an IoT platform, a blockchain platform, career building platforms they can be using through open APIs to then get access to our customers, right? Again, it's about business generation. And we do lots of partnerships with different bodies because we are very present in the ecosystem, which then lead us to do some verticalized programs around cybersecurity, IoT with specialized partners, like could be the NSCS, which is the cybersecurity body in the UK. So you see like quite a lot of activity, but more than activity, you should never measure innovation by activity. You should measure innovation by results. And one of the big things you need to do to move away from the innovation theater is to measure which are the revenue streams generating for the company, how much are you selling by integrating or reselling startup products, what are the cost savings generating when the company uses a startup instead of a big vendor and the startup is more efficient, of course, and what is the financial return on investment through all the money you are deploying to buy equity in these startups. And that's one piece, right? And not many companies do that. We, of course, do this thoroughly. But there is this ripple effect in innovation, like a drop you launch into a pond, right? And then it creates like this different halos of ripples, right? Because it's not just the money that comes in and that gets out. It's all these other things that you're enabling through this working with startups, which is future trend scouting, its relationship level with institutions or big customers. It is that sometimes you're able to win a specific deal because you have a competitive edge or a cherry on top of a bigger deal because you're working with a startup that provides that differentiator. And it's how you help the company to find new ways of working, right? And you have them learn, and you help, very importantly, with this transformation around the culture of the big corporation into a set of different startups or scale-ups, right? So let me stop 1 second. So far, so good. Are we good? Are you hearing me okay? Is there any questions, any comment? Are we good? Everybody is awake? Just checking. Yeah. Well, we can lose 1 or 2. That's okay too, right? So that's okay. So to achieve what we're trying to achieve, we need to ensure that we have the easiest interface, the smoothest interface to work with startups in the ecosystem, right? And for that, you might think that when you do that is to work outside. It's about scouting. It's about being in the events, being present, and that's just one piece of the equation. And I love this. I love this image. This is from, you know what this is? Let me ask you. You know what this image is? Anyone? There? Let me see if I can see the chat. You can all talk, right? If you open your mic, your mix, or is it blocked?
Yeah, so no, they can't. Only through the chat.
Okay, oh, that's the chat, right?
Said,
okay, Wells
Fargo.
Well, it's one of the first commercial trains, right? It was when the how do you say, the steam engine was invented and the steams for trains started, what they thought is, let's put this into a horse carriage, right? Let's see what happens. And you add a lot of horse carriage one after the other, and you did the first commercial line between David and Clinton. It's like 1850s, more or less. Yeah, I mean, it's a great idea, and for sure they were going fast, but you must imagine it was not very, very comfortable to be on top of that, breathing the smoke of the steam and just moving very quickly, because the rest of the structure was not ready for this innovation. So it's not just about innovation, it's about how you are able to adapt the rest of the structure to accept innovation, since you have a train, right? So same thing happens with the corporation. You can't have the perfect startup, but you need to also adapt your structure internally to be able to bring that business to scale. And then you have three main barriers that you need to solve. One is people, how people are being able to face their risk aversion and bet on startups, even if they fail, which is not easy. The second one is processes, how you're able to ensure there's a fast track for startups within the corporation, and then they can pass through these gates like a procurement, legal, etc., that make it so hard to work with a corporation. And the third one is even technology, is which kind of open APIs you have so that you bring this initial product into 100,000 of customers. Are you able to build the product? Are you able to support it technically, to do the post-sales? All of that, which you don't see for a first proof of concept, but once you go at commercial scale, becomes super relevant, right? So I was thinking when I was preparing the presentation that I could rescue some learnings that I've had after doing actually more than 100 investments over the last 3 years, right? I think there are a few things that I learned by doing investments at scale. I stopped doing angel investing. I couldn't do that while having this role at Telefonica, right? It would be pretty difficult to separate the physical, the professional and personal life. But I have done lots of investments over the last years, so 3 years. So I would love to just share with you a few quick learnings, right? So the first of all, which I mean, I read that in blog posts, but now it's a reality, is that you need to say no so many times, right? You say no as an investor so many more times than you say yes. I mean, it's probably 4 to 100 times more that you say no than you say yes. And you say no to very passionate and persistent people who are really calling you back and again. I will not get a no as an answer, and find ways to sneak back into your inbox or talk to somebody else and come back and again, which makes sense. They're entrepreneurs. They have been told to be resilient and to face the challenge. So you need to be very, very polite, and you need to give as much feedback as you can, and understand that you might be wrong, really wrong, when you say no, and your AD portfolio will grow time, right? Because you have no crystal ball to predict the future. So learn how to say no and learn how to live with that, right? Because here, I mean, we had some stats. I mean, we say no over 90% of times when we find a startup and we start evaluating it. Most likely the outcome is that we say no to investment, right? So first learning, saying no. The second one is that you need to invest in the people, particularly in early stage. It's not about the idea. I mean, ideas are pretty cheap. Execution is what matters. So you need to have people who are able to pivot. Most of the big successes that you see today were not the same idea they started with, right? They had to pivot over time. So you have to find teams which are resilient, able to learn from the market, to pivot, and to change around that, right? And that is so much more important than a very nice pitch. And you have to try to invest in people that you trust. So for me, it's really important that they tell me the truth. I understand this concept about the fake it till you make it, right? It's like something that we all say as entrepreneurs, but there is a point where if there is nothing solid underneath and it's just blabber, then I would not invest, right? I mean, very important that they show some initial traction and something real behind the product and the project. Third is that you need to be very passionate about what you do, because if not, it's very easy to just thinking that investing in a corporation is to meet the budget, and you forget what you're doing, and you forget to working with people, with startups. So I always try to think, if I would invest my own money, right, into this company as I was doing as a business angel? Would I do that or not? And I ask all my country managers that at least once per year, they bring one startup to the investment committee where they're so passionate about, they would be thinking about leaving Telefonica to go with the company. I ask them every time, would you leave Telefonica and join this company? And at least once per year, they do tell me yes. And I hope they don't leave, right? But at least I ask them, right? And it's super important that you have a team that understands that. And I'm very lucky to have this team at WIDA that is doing this in each of the countries and is being very passionate about what we do. It's a privilege. We are being paid to help startups succeed, right? So it's amazing. Another thing you need to be doing as an investor from the corporate perspective is to build your brand, right? And it needs to be very differential. At least your value prop needs to be differentiated, and you need to make them understand what you're looking for. So we're looking for companies in Europe and Latin America, which are raising between 500,000 and 3-4 million, which have some fit with Telefonica from a business perspective, and which are around IoT, data, AI, video, AR, VR, cybersecurity, and enterprise SaaS, mostly cloud-based. And you need to understand that's your perimeter and your game for yourself, but also to explain this to everybody else. Everybody needs to know that this is your game. If not, you would get so many requests by startups which will not meet that. And you need to be very clear with the feedback. I'm sorry, you may have a great project, but it's just not for me. So good luck with that. Right? Yeah. And then another thing to learn, that's a bit tied to what I mentioned a while ago, is that it is not easy to work with the best startups, right? It's not just something that you just do because you're Telefonica. So you need to have a very good reputation with the market. And with the best deals, you need to fight very hard to let them, so that they let you have a seat on the table, right? And you need to be able to convince the founders that your value is much more than the money. It's around the business you can generate. The money is almost circumstantial. Let me give you an example, right? I mean, we invested in a startup called Valeran, which is a startup from Israel, who's deploying smart road systems. So trying to create like a wireless IoT sensor for the whole road, right? It was an oversubscribed round with big investors. So we had to really, as with Plug and Play there and many others. So we had to make sure they understood that we could bring them the business to work with the construction companies and the big governments, so they would do the tests with them. So always define what is your value and bring that to the table, right? Another thing, and this is a learning for a corporate venture capital like us, or an open innovation arm, is that you have been tasked with two different things, right? One is that you bring business today. That's what we call fit, that you bring startups, we have fit, that means joint business opportunities today. But you've also been tasked with the fact that you need to bring disruption for the future. And you need to be willing to trade one for the other, right? And it might be sometimes very positive for the startup when you are able to give them short-term business, short-term fit. Imagine, right, if you think about the current valuations in SaaS, in software as a service, which is around a 10 times the revenues, €1 million contract with Telefonica would mean a 10 million valuation increase for the startup, which is huge, right? And 5 million, 50 million, right? So you need to understand also what is the impact you're having in the startup, not just the business you're having, the impact you're having in your business. And this is just a few of the startups that have a relevant fit with us, relevant business over the last 2 years, right? As I mentioned, this 140, these are some of our best companies, which we love to celebrate in our Hall of Fame. We need to celebrate your successes because there are enough failures too that will be happening no matter what, right? And then, oops, sorry, it moved. So let me go back. Yeah, and then you have to bet in outliers, right? I mean, the early stage returns have a tremendous dispersion. I mean, we invest between 50K and 250K, right? And we have all this ownership in stakes between 1 to 7-8% in more than 600 companies, right? And they follow a tremendous power law, which means that a few home runs change the whole performance of the portfolio, right? And we have been having exits where we get a 30x return, but we also have lots of failures where we get a 0x return, right? So it's very important that you need to see which one of the investments are being able to return the fund, the whole fund, that have been called dragons, right? And a few of them are going to be returning the most significant part of the whole fund, right? If you think we have invested around 50 million over the last years, so we need to have, I mean, with one single investment, we should have like a 300x to return the fund, which is very unlikely. But we should remember that Peter Thiel, who invested, was one of the first checks in Facebook, he put there 500K and got 1.1 billion back. It was the 2000 return, 2000x return. So maybe we can dream, right? But usually our biggest returns are around the 30x, 30 times the investment, right? Which is really pretty good. Sorry, moving to the next one. Yeah, and I was mentioning the outliers from a financial perspective, but it's also outliers from the business development perspective, right? That are able to provide lots of revenues or lots of savings. We're using this Argentinian startup called WinClub to help us to optimize our online marketing strategies. And they are really helping us to minimize, or what I would say, to minimize the spending or to maximize the return on the spending in online advertising, which is a tremendous impact. And they are really an outlier for us, even if this is not a super high valuable startup for now, but they're growing quickly, right? And when you are investing in early stage, I mean, sometimes investors ask about these projections for, I don't know, 5 years in time, 7 years in time. They don't make any sense to me, right? I mean, who knows what the future will tell in 5 years' time? What is more important to me is, do they have a clear understanding of the next step? And the next step may vary, but it's usually between 6 to 12 months. Now, even with COVID, 12 to 18 months. And I want to understand that the CEO can tell me what are the milestones they need to achieve, what are the resources they need to get to that milestone, and if they have enough money to get into that, from this seed or early A round to the Series A or Series B round, right? And of course, as we see, things can change super quick and suddenly, like with COVID, and we need to have a team that is able to pivot and adapt. And this is a very good example here. We have a huge pivot, right? This company we invested in last year, it was a very high growth startup in the UK called Charged Up. They were actually doing charging battery stations and charging battery pods that you can bring to another bar, right? And a very interesting business model. But yeah, imagine bars and COVID. So the whole business just disappeared in weeks. And they pivoted in a few weeks into cleanup, and now they're doing sanitary stations for hydrogel, etc., with branding, and they're growing like crazy, much more than before. So, I mean, you need to be ready to think how you can transform your business and your knowledge and your assets into a new thing, right? So, very interesting. And lastly, my last advice here is you need to be super patient, right? I mean, particularly if you invest in early stage, it will take maybe, I don't know, 5, 7 to 10 years to get initial liquidity, right? And I think that's one of the key of the success at WIDA, is that our exec team, our CEO, which bets a lot into this, has been very patient and waiting to see the results, right? And understanding that we need to really measure some of the metrics around the sustainability of the companies and help them when they are struggling, because they will struggle, right? And then you will start getting the results of that patient after 7 or 10 years, right? I mean, we had one example here. We invested in a company called Relayer, and it was an investment we did like 5 years ago, and it was acquired 2 years ago. And the company was acquired by 300 million. For sure, we had a very small stake at the time, right? But you need to be able to bet over time into the companies, right? And just let me give you a bonus learning, is that I think it's important that you have like a way of a contrarian view on the future to be an investor. So if you have the thesis and how you feel that the world will be, first you have the thesis, your own thesis, and you try to invest in startups that are trying to make this thesis come true, right? And actually investing is something that Chris Dixon defined as investing in good ideas that look like very bad ideas at the time, right? Those are the best investments. If they would look like very good ideas at the time you invest, everybody would do that, right? So yeah, and I think that this is the thing that Peter Thiel draw in Y Combinator in YC, which is this Venn diagram, where you have this, the sweet spot is between, it's a good idea, seems like a bad idea, but it's still a good idea, because sometimes bad ideas look like bad ideas, so you should not invest in them no matter what, right? So try to find that sweet spot to do the investment, right? And I like this tweet I saw a while ago, right? So that you understand what you're looking for seed investments, right? Which is, I mean, you should be thinking, what is what you don't believe about the project, right? And then you need to be able to see if the entrepreneurs have the guts, the knowledge, the passion to learn, adapt, and execute, even if the starting hypotheses have changed, because nobody knows what's the future, right? And I really would love to end with this sentence by Jason Lenkin, which is a great guy on investing and great entrepreneur, who usually says that your strategies and your insights into the venture market that you have today are probably already 3 to 4 years old, because if you need to be investing about the future that is just yet to come. So challenge your current thesis and try to come up with this vision on the future. So folks, I want to leave a few minutes for questions. I don't know, I talked about a few different topics from my experience, my corporate experience, my investing experience. So let me know what you think, any questions, any comments.
Yes, so we have one question here that says, at Wyra, do you only invest in startups that are related to Telefónica's core business? If not, then what is the play for you guys in anything that is not related to the core business?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And core business for a telco, it's a broad concept, right? I mean, what is it core? I mean, core business just networks and just, I don't know, the platforms, IoT and 5G, etc., or the use cases that those core technology enable, because then we're talking about edtech, wearables, or anything that is cloud. So it's hard, right? So because it's very broad, which is very broad. So we say a bit in the middle. For sure, we invest in our core strategic needs, from networks to I don't know, to cyber, to data, AI. But sometimes we also invest in the use cases that make use of those deployed infrastructure. What we don't do is we just invest in everything online, because that's too broad. We don't do marketplaces. We don't do things where it's not our right to play. Our right to play is defined by, can we help this startup to make business through us or not?
Thank you. So we have another question, which is, how would you recommend to approach evaluation of deep tech startups?
Good. It's a bit harder, right? I mean, deep tech is not just about the business model, what it should be. So you need to look at the metrics and see if they make sense, what are the dynamics. But there's also about what is that you're creating as has a fundamentally different intellectual property, right? Are you creating something that's going to be of value in the future? And for that, you need to have some tech validators. I mean, can you determine if this algorithm is better than the other? Probably not, right? So we are lucky there, because our tech experts at the group in Telefonica are the ones who do this kind of tech validation for us. So with deep tech, I would say it is still about the business model and the growth and understanding the real need in the market. But to make sure that they're really good, we use our internal experts to validate them technically.
The next question is about he's asking, the two scouting offices you mentioned are Wyra, or?
Yeah, it's part of our open innovation ecosystem, but it's not WIDA. WIDA is the 7 innovation hubs and the seed investments, the scouting offices we have. We have scouters in Silicon Valley and Israel, and they bring us some deals. Sometimes they are for WIDA to invest. Mostly it's more for innovation ventures, the bigger funds that we have in the group to invest. It depends. Or just sometimes it's to work with a startup and we're not investing, right? We can do all of it.
Then we have another question, which is how much do you rely on your gut feel to invest in a startup?
A lot. More than gut feeling, which there's something about it, which is you need to be passionate about investment. It's about how do you feel about entrepreneurs being able to, as I said, be resilient, adapt, change, etc. And it's about people. So if you are evaluating people, a lot of that, it's a bit on the gut feeling side. It's like, would I like to work with this person for the next 5 to 10 years? Do they think they have what it takes to be ambitious and to move the company to the further next stage and hurdles? So you need to find some objective criteria. They need to be there. But a bit of it is investing in people, and there's always a subjective matter there. Yeah.
Hi, Miguel. Can I jump in with a question, please?
Sure, please.
I can't type it in the Q&A, unfortunately. So my question is, so I have a startup, and for example, if I want to approach Telefonica, for example, to become the investors of my startup, what should I do? What should be, the actions which I need to do?
Mm-hmm. First, I hope that you are part of the perimeter that I mentioned, right? At least some of these technologies, or that you feel that if you are too early, you should write to any of the wider team members or team members in my team, and all of them will very helpfully answer you, right? And you could then, if not, write through the website in wida.com or through the social media, contact us. We get approached by many different means, from social media to the website, to the emails, to LinkedIn. So we see that there is initial fit. If we see this fit, we will direct you to one of the scouters. If you are a Spanish startup or based in Spain, to the wider Spain guys, if not the wider UK, wider Germany, right? We would try to make it closer to your location. And we would then do a first meeting to see what you're up to and if there is any potential business development. If that's okay and we like the startup and this is in a stage where we feel we can invest, if it's too early, we would go to Open Future, to one of our hubs. We would not invest yet, but we could help you. If it's, as I said, already making revenues between €500,000 or €1 million, initial market fit, they would be thinking we could invest. We would then ask our business unit, hey, do you like it? Do you think you could put your marketing money and try to bring this into the market? If we see that all of this is happening, then we could end up investing, right? And as I said, of this, every 100 of those, we invest in 4 or 5, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your answer. And another question would be is, what are the benefits of having you as an investor?
Yeah, I mean, one is, but is that I would say less relevant, the money, up to €250,000 that we would invest in seed stage. But more than the money, more than the money, because that way you can get this from the market if you have a very good project. It is that we open you the doors to do business with us, right? To have this fit that I mentioned. And that's something invaluable, right? If you're able to bring your market to scale in different countries with a company like Telefonica. So we try to be this interface, these translators between the corporation and the startup to try to make it successful. We are not always succeeding, right? It's hard, but we try.
Thank you. Okay, I disappear again.
And the last question that we have for tonight is, in which specific sectors do you see real demand and problems to solve in this jungle of disruptive technologies? How do you identify the real requirements of the market and do the scouting?
Martin, if you have the answer for that question, you are hired immediately, right? This is so hard. You need to try to see trends, right? Now we see big trends around the behavioral patterns that shift, right? We see a big trend around the future of work. We see a big trend around EdTech, and this is evolving. We see a big trend around how mobility is evolving. A big trend around how cybersecurity for the home is being in a way merged with cybersecurity at work. So, and all of that, I'm just talking about industries, not technologies. Then you could say we see shifts around, as I mentioned, IoT or data, etc. So it is hard to say with all of this intersection of technologies and industries that are changing, where do we put more effort? There we try to make bets, the next bets on this vision on the future. So we feel that in the future, consumers are going to be using more their computers also at home. I need to be secure because they're working, so they need to have networks that enable edge computing. Or players are going to be playing casual gaming and professional gaming more at home and also on the road. So we need to have a different service around the edge computing. So these bets, I mentioned a few of the current bets. And once we do the bet, we try to find which startups have products or are working on products that fill the needs of that bet. Can we be wrong? Surely we are wrong many times, but that's the work of the investor, right? We try to change the reality by helping it to be changed, but we fail many times.
Thank you very much. We have another question from Tomas, and he's asking, trends from 5G changing environment, which type of startups, including tech, might be worth to look at?
Yeah, it's not easy. We still have not found the killer use case for 5G, right? There are so many use cases, but none of them could be defined as a single one. I would say what business models will change 10 times because a new technology comes. And in this case, new technologies that we are seeing is with 5G is which startups or needs are going to be solved by having massive broadband and very low latency. So one clear one is VR, right? We're going to be having for sure use cases where VR is not so cumbersome and difficult and a bit claggy, but you can really have better headsets and glasses without so much computing power around you, enable you to have experience VR/AR for the month, right? And then the reality. We will see something for sure around the industry 4.0. I mean, robotics in the factory that do many more things on their own, like all these CNC mill machines that are now being very hard to compute, and we need to install software into them that's going to be handled through the cloud and then through 5G and edge computing. We for sure might be seeing much better video analyzing power, right? Because it's going to be closer to the source and high broadband. So you're going to see more use cases around counting cars around in a highway or people in the street and taking decisions based on that for cities. I'm just mentioning a few, right? So I think gaming, immersion, industries are a few of the ones, and then for sure the autonomous car, right? Autonomous car and everything which this is going to be tied around mobility, because let's be clear. I think that when autonomous cars become a reality in Europe, they're going to coexist. And coexistence is not going to make traffic better, but worse. So how we prepare for that is also a very interesting 5G challenge.
Well, Miguel, thank you very much for this talk. It
My
was really
pleasure.
interesting to hear about everything you do, and thank you very much for giving us some time of your day. And yes,
Of course, keep the passion that you have now coming out from IE. Build projects, take risks, and I wish you lots of luck. I envy you.
Thank you, Miguel. It was a pleasure to host you. Have a great night.
Wonderful. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
well, guys, I think we have some minutes to take a break in order to start the last panel of the night, which I believe is going to be really, really interesting. We're going to have great speakers, great guests, and please feel free to get some water, bring us a snack, and be back in 5 minutes so we can start our last talk of the day.
Meanwhile, you can share, guys, where you're from, and if you have startups or any other questions which you would like to tackle within the next panel. Thank you. Hi, Luis. 1 second. We will begin in a few minutes.
Perfect.
Okay, guys, so good night, everyone. For those who just joined, we're about to start our last talk of the day. And this talk will be hosted by my colleague, Diego Rubio. So, Diego, feel free to start whenever you want.
All right. Well, welcome everyone to the IE Entrepreneurship Summit. I hope that you've had a great time so far. We're very glad to have you. And as many of you know, innovation is one of the central pillars that IE University was based upon. It is really one of the main drivers of change and revolution in today's age. And for that reason, I want to dedicate tonight's panel to the topic of innovation and how entrepreneurs used it to create very disruptive companies. For that purpose, tonight, I've gathered together three of what I consider to be some of the most exciting startup leaders that there are in Spain right now. And they have all made themselves stand out because they have looked at the world, analyzed it deeply, and come up with creative ways to make it a better place. I hope that you've enjoyed your time with us so far. And without further ado, let me introduce our panelists tonight. Firstly, we have Cristina Alexandri Munoz. Cristina is co-founder and chief executive officer of Bound for Blue. The company delivers automated wind-assisted propulsion systems as a solution to all ship owners and operators looking to decrease their fuel-related costs and pollutant emissions. Cristina has participated in no less than 10 national and European research and development programs, filed 5 patents, and published 4 research papers in the field of wing sail design and its various applications. Cristina was selected in 2017 as one of Europe's top 50 entrepreneurs, received the 2019 edition of the Forbes 30 Under 30 Award, and won the 2020 edition of Federación Española de Mujeres Directivas, Ejecutivas, Profesionales y Empresarias Innovation in Female Entrepreneurship Award. Thank you for joining us tonight, Cristina. I would also like to introduce Pablo M. Vidarte, currently the Chief Executive Officer at Archine Technologies. Pablo Vidarte is the inventor and developer of BIO, Archine's leading project for the generation of electricity from plant photosynthesis. Listed in the Forbes 30 Under 30 Europe list at the age of 20, he has also figured in the Astana International Expo of 2017. Pablo's company has been listed as one of the top 50 most innovative startups of Europe by the European Parliament and was recognized by Google in South Summit 2016 with the title of Most Disruptive Company of the Year and the first prize in energy and industry. His achievements add up to more than 20 internationally renowned awards in London, Austria, Bucharest, Prague, Paris, Helsinki, Barcelona, Madrid, and Brussels, among others. Pablo, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Diego.
And finally, Luis Perez del Valsherif. Luis is a delegate advisor and founder of Lola Market, an online shopping delivery service that offers personalized service, unmatched one-hour delivery, and trusted products from a variety of national and international supermarkets. He has been at the forefront of companies like BolaClick, of which he was founder and delegate advisor. He is also a member and founder of the Move On movement for young entrepreneurs, a member of South Summit's Consejo Asesor since 2011, and has published several books and articles. Mr. Perez regularly speaks to universities like IE, IS, ESADE, UPC, and so on. And it is my pleasure to welcome him and all of our panelists to today's event. Welcome, everybody. Now, I would like to start the discussion today with a definition. Now, the Merriam-Webster dictionary defines innovation as a new idea, method, or device, which seems to me a bit of a dull definition. However, while innovation may be generally defined in the same way, it is certainly not lived, sought after, or applied in the same way. Pablo, if I could start with you, how would you define innovation? And in what ways do you or your company embody that definition?
Well, innovation is to do something that is not really obvious, but basically something that has never been seen before. In our case, what we do is to generate energy out of nature itself, even from plants' photosynthesis. So I would say that definitely that's very, very innovative. In general terms, I would say that for any company to innovate, they really have to risk a lot. So it is a balance. If you are an innovative company, you are risking yourself to basically be in bankruptcy in like a very brief time. But well, you know, there are a few ones who are lucky enough.
For sure, for sure. Luis, could you share your thoughts with us? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry.
There you go. No problem.
So innovation is really a way of living for a member of a startup. So, for example, well, my previous experience, both in BolaClick and Lola Market, is a continuous innovation process which makes the company different every 6 months. So it could be a totally different company, maybe based on a solid business model, etc. But you have to be constantly innovating if you want to keep the pace and to be a leader. So for us, it's a way of living, and in some way, it's a 360 experience, both in procedures, services, and products. So for us, innovation is everything.
I like that. I like that. Cristina, what do you think? Do you agree with any of the guys that have come up so far? Do you have any ideas of your own? Oh, Cristina, I'm sorry. I don't think we can hear you. Nothing? Could you try?
Maybe.
There you go. Perfect. There you are.
Okay. So the thing is that I see it just as Luis. So we tend to think about new ideas as innovations or methods or services, but it's a journey. I mean, it's not the result, it's also the journey. And something really interesting that someone told me years ago, it's like Einstein had like 10 years between two of his main discoveries. And no one's speaking about this journey, and it's a journey of growth, and it's iterative process. And I believe this is key, because you take a decision, you start learning, and then you iterate, and you get to a product. It's quite different from the initial idea that you had at the beginning, and that's key for the success. And in the way how we innovate in Bound for Blue is not having this new idea in the sense that we are using the wind again to propel vessels, but rather giving it a switch and applying new technology to do so. So it's about novel technology, but not the noble concept of using wind like centuries ago was used in the shipping industry.
I see. Well, that's a very interesting thought. And actually, now that you've brought up Einstein as an example in your speech, I wanted to mention, when we look at innovators, sometimes it looks like when they come up with great spontaneous ideas, it looks almost like a stroke of genius, almost like sporadic inspiration. But I think all of you three would be the best to explain to us, where do you think that innovation comes from in an individual? Do you think it's luck, circumstances? Is it intelligence that they're born with? What do you think makes for a great innovator? If I could start with Luis, maybe this time.
I think it was Pablo Picasso who said, inspiration exists, but you should be working at that time, no? So que me pille trabajando, no? So you should be working at that time. So for us, for example, I think innovation never comes from a brilliant idea. Probably it comes from a process. For example, our daily process are we have an innovation group, and every morning we just get together and start speaking, for example, about the bottlenecks or the areas where we think there's a problem we should solve. When that happens, our target is to erase friction in those processes. So sometimes we speak about operations, other times we speak about marketing, other times we speak about the type of service or the value proposition. And then I think the process we use is we start looking at the best practices in the world. So also those type of references are very, very important for you to be inspired, because in the end, I think it's at least in a deductive process, it's ridiculous not to take all the references that are already in the market and already working and are the best. So when you take all of those and your team starts working with a very clear target, maybe more or less disruptive depending on the project, but let's go to the more disruptive, then it's when the minds of the people who are in the group start to really be creative. And this creativity based on the best practices that you're putting together is where you get to an innovative process.
I see. Well, we don't have Pablo Picasso to comment on this tonight, but we do have Pablo Vidarte, who perhaps can tell us a little bit of what he thinks. Pablo, what do you think? Where does innovation come from in an individual?
Well, I think that first off, we should have to make a difference between innovation and good strategy, because sometimes we say that a company is evolving and it's making new things once in a while, and it's actually true, but I wouldn't really call that innovation. I would call that a good way of thinking, a good way of changing, evolving, a good strategy after all. If I had to say where real innovation comes from, it could be from two sources, but the main one will be from the most crazy ideas. I mean, and then trying to make them possible. Nevertheless, if you want to make useful innovation, normally it's just trying to see things that are needed and trying to solve a problem. But normally, if you really do innovation, which is making something that is not obvious for someone who's really a good who really has a great knowledge on the matter, you really have to go into something that could be even thought as impossible or not really predictable from the great majority of points of view. So anyway, I think that you have to have crazy ideas if you want to be innovative. If you want to have a great company that is evolving, you don't really have to be creating innovation itself, but just have a good strategy, which is really vital after all.
I see. Cristina, what do you think?
So I'm really aligned with Pablo. I mean, innovation cannot be understood without thinking about the needs. So you have to solve something for someone. And I mean, we're here today, and I think we share this same vision. It's to build a better future. So innovation has to be there because of the desire to make meaning. And I think that in that sense, I really don't share the same vision as Pablo in this way, that it's not just big ideas. It's not a big product. It's not, you can really innovate and be disruptive in the way, for instance, in the go-to-market strategy, there are a lot of ways to be disruptive. And it's not just it's not just like the next Hyperloop or, which I mean, it's disruptive innovation, but there has been disruption everywhere. And in this sense, yeah, I mean, it's accessible to everyone, and it's something that you have to train and you improve with practice. And just as Ruth told before, it does not come up one day in the morning when you wake up. So you have to work, and when you work and you know the market, you know the needs, and then the innovation comes.
I see. Well, that which you just said right now, that your company is building a better future, a new future. I'd like to ask each of you, and if I can just ask you, Cristina, directly, what kind of future do you think your company is building, if you know what I mean?
So in our case, we are giving a solution to the maritime industry, and I'm not sure if everyone knows, but I was really sea blinded before founding the company. So shipping is the backbone of the global economy. It's responsible for transporting 80% of the global goods. And I mean, nearly everything that's surrounding you has been shipped on board a vessel, but they have a huge environmental problem. They're responsible for 3% of the total worldwide CO2 emissions, 50% of nitrogen oxide global emissions, and 30% of sulfur emissions. So in our case, our mission is to contribute to shift towards a greener and more sustainable maritime transport.
I see. Luis, what do you think? What kind of future would you say that your company is building for us?
Well, our company is basically, what we do is instantaneous delivery, food delivery, I would say grocery delivery. So today what we're doing is we aggregate the different supermarkets. So in an app, you can place your order, and in as little as an hour, you have it at home. Or even at a scheduled time in timeframes of 1 hour. And you can change supermarket, you can sweep, and you have many possibilities, and also you have an experience through a personal shopper that is really working for you outside the service of the supermarket. So how we see it is, and we've seen it with this COVID situation, which has been terrible for everyone. There was a panic situation in the month of March, April, where nobody wanted to go to the supermarket. And it was Lola Market who went to the supermarket and the personal shoppers who were going to the supermarket. So people really understood that these type of sentence that some people say that, no, I like to go to the supermarket and touch products and all of that stuff, that may be so, but probably more in some type of premium products, which is what we call the critical product, rather than the heavy stuff, the water, the milk, and all those type of goods, the paper, so in the end, my experience through many years of being an entrepreneur is that practical things always win. So if you want to ask me if I invented the wheel, I would say no. I'm just innovating. So, and basically the innovation or the disruption comes from speed, from service, and from price.
Nice. All right. I like your ideas. Pablo, what do you think? Your company is certainly very dedicated to making the world a better place. What kind of world do you imagine you're building for the future? How does it look like?
Yeah, well, we normally describe it as a symbiosis between nature and technology, and also the human being, as you may suppose. We are actually focusing on cities and agriculture as if they were just one thing, because we're actually having different business lines right now that are basically focused on trying to avoid living between concrete walls and start living as the world was before. And we do this not just by generating energy out of nature and thus making what we find as green areas in our cities, not just as a decorative thing, but something useful. And we don't just do that. We actually also do other technologies that are also of our own. For example, using plants in domotics, which is very, very cool as well. I mean, imagine, for example, using plants as biological switches, going inside a hotel room, touching a green wall, and being able to calibrate or just turn on the lights of your room. So in general terms, we want to make the world a better place by introducing nature itself, and also, well, these innovations. I mean, so that even a farmer could not just be a farmer to nourish ourselves, but actually to nourish our cities energetically. So, I mean, that's what we're working in, and I would say that my explanation could be way longer, but in general terms, it's that.
I like it. Well, I can't help but hearing all you three and just, I think that you're making a better future for all of us. I really enjoy listening to your visions of what you're trying to build. I want to take on something that that you mentioned a while ago about innovation being about crazy ideas, and also about what Luis just talked about the COVID situation. I think crazy ideas have never found a better home than in a crazy world as the one we're living in right now. I mean, Luis, as you were saying yourself, your company has been tremendously useful, especially in these situations. But I think perhaps innovation can find ways to make itself useful in many ways. I would like to ask you first, Luis, what role do you think innovation will have in rebuilding society after the COVID pandemic? Or do you think it will have a role in rebuilding society?
Absolutely, absolutely. Actually, the other day I was having a call with one of the big four to understand what is really the plan that economy has, Europe has, for this change of the world. And I must say that the index of how all of these helping facilities are allocating is most of them are based in innovative tasks. So I think that the world is going to come back. I think it's going to take some time for that. And I think everybody has to reinvent in some way their own business. So considering if you go to the street and you see all the shops there, every shop is going to have an online application, or every shop is going to have a website platform or whatever. Because in the end, I think this is just some attention to the world that we are not immortal, and we are not I mean, against defeat. So I think that all the society has to really put a blank page and with a budget zero, understand where they are at this point and where they have to adapt and where they should be. And this is general for all the economy. So on the grocery sector, this is absolutely key, because people and the elder people and the blind people and the handicapped people, they have seen a new way to organize their way. But in the end, this is just an example. I mean, it's everything. It's restaurants, it's energy, it's sea transport, it's plants, it's solar energy, everything. I think everything has to really be reinvented from budget zero, I would say.
Perfect, perfect. Pablo, if I can invite you on, what do you think? Innovation, future society, how does it work? Do you think innovation will play a central role in post-COVID society?
Yeah, I mean, we normally say that it's innovate or die. Unfortunately, even though you try to innovate with the COVID situation, you can die as well. But clearly, if you want to make a difference, not just in the world at all, I mean, at least in your world, you have to innovate as much as possible, unless you are a mask fabricator or something like that. But in general terms, for sure, every single crisis brings innovation, and we've seen that always. I mean, I don't really have to give a lot of examples, but yeah, I mean, I only see that the companies that have innovated are the ones who are actually succeeding. So even Airbnb, for example, it's right now doing something absolutely opposite to what they were doing in terms of, I mean, as you may suppose, they were under a great crisis, and right now they are redirecting everything they were doing just to be another kind of company. So yeah, I mean, it's something that we will see, and not just the innovative, the innovation as I call it, but also the strategic thinking, that it's very, very important here.
I see, I see. Christina, what do you think?
So for me, innovation has always been important. I mean, this crisis just show what was there in the market. I mean, for instance, in my sector, it's a quite like 20th century sector. I mean, and right now, due to the crisis, the COVID crisis, you've seen a more digitalized industry, and they're adopting more technologies that were before the COVID crisis. So, I mean, innovation has always been important, and it's a matter of staying relevant. So we've seen a lot of companies that were not there. They weren't with the eyes open to these new innovations that were going to disrupt their market. And you have examples like Kodak or Blockbuster. So it's really funny because Blockbuster had the opportunity to buy 4 times Netflix. And then Netflix ended up with their business. I mean, innovation has always been there, and you have to be really open to it. And just for the COVID situation, I hope this improves the situations in certain countries. So I hope it accelerates the money that's invested in innovation. For instance, here in Spain. In Spain, we only invest like 1.4% of the total GDP. And it's not so big compared to Israel, which is investing like 4 or 5% of the total GDP. So I hope it also boosts the funding in the innovation segments.
Wonderful. Well, I think all 3 of you definitely have something very important and very, very relevant to contribute to society, be it before COVID, during COVID, or after. So I congratulate you on that. It is at this point that I would like to ask the audience if you have any questions to ask our three panelists. Go ahead. It's more than apparent that they have a lot of interesting insights to give us all. So we'll be taking questions at this point, and please be my guests. And perhaps while we're waiting for a few questions to add up, I keep thinking all three of you have developed your entrepreneurship journey here in Spain. Now, I was looking at some statistics a little earlier, and Spain, in the context of Europe, is regarded only as a moderate innovator as compared to, say, strong innovators such as France, Ireland, Sweden, even Denmark. First of all, what do you think? Is Spain a leader or could be a leader in innovation? What has been your experience trying to build your companies in Spain? Would you improve, or do you have any criticisms of how it works here? If I could go with you, Cristina.
So I think I would like to start with the positive part, and I think Spain is really well prepared with professionals. And I mean, we greatest innovations have been performed by Spanish inventors. So I mean, the society is well prepared. But in our case, I would like to say that as a disadvantage. In Spain, there is a lack of funding in industrial companies that are able to generate a lot of indirect jobs and direct jobs, but high quality jobs. So I mean, there is an aversion of taking this risk from VCs that you don't see it with these deep tech companies in USA or in UK, for instance. So I would encourage the VC community, I mean, to have more aversion to this risk and not go to these traditional models, go to more disruptive, innovative companies. Yeah, so that's my point.
I see. Luis, what has been your experience? What would you say about what it's like to be an innovator in Spain?
Yeah, well, I think in some way, and also connecting with the COVID crisis, I think you are more innovative when difficulties come, because then your brain starts working at a higher speed. So I think it's easier, or at least that is my case or my experience. It's easier to innovate with difficulties than when you have a lot of money and you're just trying to be smart. I think the COVID crisis is a little bit something parallel of what we live in Spain. I think Spain is a great country. It's a small economy. We don't have lots of facilities and lots of help to do it, but I think we have enough for brave people to start. And also, I think that the economies related to Spain are very important. So all of Latin America makes Spain not only be attractive for an innovation for Spain, but for Spanish-speaking countries. And on the other hand, we're also a part of Europe. So that means that we are a country with a double impact in both. To be honest with your question, if you go to Silicon Valley or to Tel Aviv, you'll find an incredible area to innovate and incredible, I mean, environment. If you even go to New York, because everything is much easier, the economy it's I mean enormous, and if you get it big. In Spain, if you get it, you may get it small. But in any case, the good thing of Spain is that you can impact other continents, as I was saying. So I think it's a great country to innovate.
Well, as a Latin American currently surrounded by very inspiring Spaniards, I have to say I totally agree with that. Pablo, what are your thoughts on this? Is Spain as a place for innovators?
Well, I really agree with Luis. I think that Spain in general, it's a great country, and I would love to stay in Spain. But actually, and we see this with any kind of crisis that we face, we are like the last ones in the queue when trying to survive any kind of crisis, at least in Europe. And one of the good points about being in Spain and not, for example, in Silicon Valley, is that we do have a lot of help from Europe. In our case, for example, we received two great financial supports from the European Union of a few million euros, and that really helped a lot in terms of research and development. If we're talking about Spain specifically, it's not the best country in Europe to actually develop a company, but it is perhaps the coolest to live in. Anyway, apart from that, the three financial rounds that we've made, we've done them here in Spain. But the next one that we're developing right now, we just have to focus on the United States, and specifically in Silicon Valley, because really they don't really see the investment as we see it here in Spain. We are like devaluating too much what we do, and in general, I don't speak just about what we do, but in general what Spanish people do. What I see in the United States is that they really value what you do. They even increase by 10 times the valuation of your company, and they really make a great push in terms of market and commercial impact. So it is a challenge to grow in Spain as a company, but it is way more challenging to actually be a big corporation if you try to go to that point. And we really need to go to that point if we want to make the impact that we're that we need to do if our technology is as good as we say, and it is, and it's something that we've seen in our tests in this last year. So anyway, I would really recommend, if you're a Spaniard, to do it here in Spain. But to be honest, there are greater opportunities in terms of investment and becoming big.
I see. Well, at this point, we actually do have a question from one of our audience members. It's directed at Cristina. Cristina, which habit besides work and reading is important to keep the spirit of innovation alive?
I think innovation, to innovate, I mean, you also have to go outside work, because if you're always there, you always see the problem from one perspective. So if you go outside and just paint or go to music concert or whatsoever, I mean, you get another perspective, and you're able to go back again the following day and see everything in another way. I also really like to network with other people that have their own ventures, I mean, other entrepreneurs, and just learn about their companies, the market, where they are. And sometimes just you have this idea, and I mean, talking with a friend of mine, she explained me the business model they had, and it was like, okay, this can be applied in my company too. I mean, it's not just about your market or your customer, and obviously you have to have these eyes open, and when you go to your customer, it's not just selling your product, but just being aware if they have any other problem that you can also solve with your technology or with something that you've built inside your company. But it's going also outside. I mean, you can have a great idea and a big innovation in your business model, for instance, and it just comes from another part. So eyes open and ears open, and just also have fun. I mean, it's not just work. And
I see. I think that's great advice. You know, Luis, what do you think? What do you think are habits of great innovators, great entrepreneurs? What do you think are the habits that make you successful?
A little bit of obsessive people. I probably what Christina was saying is absolutely true. You have to do, you have to switch in some way, work and keep your eyes and ears open. But in the end, I think the innovation usually comes from being a little bit obsessive with the problem you want to solve, or at least the focus where you want to be. So to give you an example that may give a little bit of clarity to what I'm saying is, if you, many companies say that the client is in the center of the equation, no? And you want to give the client a value proposition, and for that value proposition you have to be innovating. I see innovation in the end as a spiral, as an opening spiral. So with that problem and that client in the center, you have to be quite obsessive in terms of what does he think, how does he react, what is he doing, what does he need, etc. Many questions that come and go every day, even when you're in the shower or you're below a tree and an apple hits you. It's you have to be thinking about that client and that problem you're looking, read books, see Netflix, everything related to that, speak with everyone, and then suddenly you don't know why one day it just comes.
Well, that's a very interesting thought. Pablo, what do you think? What do you think are the habits that make you a successful entrepreneur, a successful innovator?
Well, impatience may be one of the main ones, actually. But apart from the most obvious ones, which would be going out of the box or just try to run away from your comfort zone. I mean, one of the reasons I studied what I studied is just because it wasn't in my hometown. So I just had to go to another city. And actually, that's one of the reasons I left university as well. But anyway, apart from that, I would say that any kind of motivation that makes you obsessive, it's actually a good guiding point. I mean, even just rage, for example, can make you a good innovator because you want to make a difference in the world. It will be the kind of innovation the villain of a film will make. But anyway, it is a guidance to actually be innovative. You really have to follow what you really need. Sometimes it's a need of freedom. Sometimes it's a need of being understood, or just having a certain image in front of the rest of the world. But in general terms, I would say that innovation, after all, it's something that you look for. And if you suddenly find it when you never expected, it's just because you've been looking for it during a long time. And anyway, I would say that every single person has a different way to find innovation. And in my case, I actually found that in well, with too many different things, not just wanting freedom or rage, as I said before, but actually any other thing. I mean, sometimes I'm just in a journey in another country, and I just think about ideas that are really impacting. But if I just stay here, and by the way, COVID, and that's one of the bad things that it has, that it makes you basically enclose yourself in your house, and maybe you think that you will have more time to think about cool stuff, but it's not real, because you're actually just trapped in within four walls, and you're not really able to innovate as much as you would really do if you were outside. So that will be a summary in my case.
All right, very, very interesting responses from all of our panelists. We actually have another question, likewise from Andre Carreño, who says, if we compare the first 20 years from the 1900s to the 1920s versus the 2000s and 2020, we realize that the human race has invented or discovered less things. We are only adapting what is existing to make our life more comfortable. What do you think about it? So, an interesting question. I mean, Luis, what do you think? Have we been discovering, inventing less things and just making our existence more comfortable with the things we have?
I wouldn't really agree, to be honest. I would say that things are dramatically speeding up. Maybe what the audience is suggesting is that it's probably before it's probably more a case of an inventor that has names and surnames, and that inventor is very famous for something special. No? Whereas nowadays, probably it's big corporations, it's maybe startup people, maybe, but it's not so obvious that it's a new invention. And I think it's more a matter of innovation rather than invention, because before probably, for example, I invented the light, and then everybody knew it was Edison, for example, or whatever. Now it's a constant innovation. I think when I go to, for example, the South Summit or whatever, I see so many projects, so many things that it's really impossible to absorb all that knowledge or all of those ways of creating. And now, for example, we've seen with the vaccine, no, maybe many of the people were saying that there was not going to be vaccine, there was going to be a treatment, but you had many labs in the world. So it was not Louis Pasteur, it was I mean, many corporates working in parallel until they really got the vaccine. No? The truth is that Louis Pasteur invented the vaccine, and the corporates are inventing one vaccine for as a solution for that. No, I think in the end, innovating is something like putting together craziness and common sense, and then taking it to the market, probably.
I like that. That's a good quote to have on your wall, huh? That's a good one. Pablo, what do you think about that question? Would you agree that we're inventing less in these recent times?
It's not just that I absolutely disagree. It's just that it's totally false. I mean, I don't really know where that person has actually taken those arguments, but they're not even real at all. I mean, I've been with too many people from NASA, from Google, from everywhere, all around the world. And it's not just that it's obvious that we are under an absolutely exponential growth in terms of technology and new innovations, but it's something that if you really study about it, we are really advancing a lot in every single field. And I'm not just talking about quantum computers or things like that, which, by the way, they are advancing a lot. But in terms of biotechnology, for example, in terms of everything that you could mention in terms of medicines or new techniques in terms of communications, in terms of virtual worlds, in terms of how we move. I mean, in 1920, you didn't even have a TV, and now you have a smartphone, and that's something that we invented in the last 20 years, and that was not really obvious, because I mean, the only innovation that you could make in those times was going from the telegraph to the average phone. And if you say that that's the same thing as a smartphone, it's not real, because I mean, one thing is a way to communicate, but another thing is to have literally the Library of Alexandria within your hand, and also being able to actually do whatever you want. I mean, it's not just searching for information. What you can do with the smartphone is actually going to anywhere in the world and really knowing where you're going to. It's actually playing games, or even just texting with someone in Japan in real time. We are going to space, and we even know how to land rockets. We're seeing an absolute revolution in every single term, and we are in the verge of actually reaching the superabundance stage of our society. We were under an absolutely surviving stage before, and then in the last 200 years we went into an abundant stage, and now super abundance, and that's something that we see. Things are really costing too little. I mean, if you go to a supermarket, you can even find caviar from Iceland at €2, and it's something that it's absolutely preposterous for someone in the 20th century, or the beginning of the 20th century. In general terms, I would have too many examples, but I absolutely disagree with that argument. I mean, just I really invite that person to go on and look for more information, because I'm pretty sure that Luis really pointed out the real problem, and is that probably that person is thinking about one specific area, but probably that area is even wrong as well. So, I mean, that's my answer.
I see. Christina, what do you think? What do you think about this question?
I probably think the person, I mean, I really agree with my two colleagues today, but I think that it's just that you have to think about it as when you go to college and the teacher is teaching a subject, and I mean, you just believe that, and then you build on top of that. So obviously there was an innovation there, but then on top of that, there's another innovation. So you don't have to stay in that level. But I suppose that this person is thinking about maybe software companies, or where innovation, you are not able to see where it is. Maybe, I mean, they are obviously not thinking about Hyperloop, which I mentioned before. They are not thinking about maybe Pablo's innovation about getting this energy from plants. I mean, they're maybe thinking about software like apps, or that really seem very similar when you compare them. But then maybe they're really different at the back end. So I mean, I understand this innovation not as a way to just like an inventor today, but a group of people working to create this next level.
I see. Thank you all of you three for your answers. It's very interesting insight. I wanted to take on a little bit of what Luis said a while ago about, well, there, and Pablo too, about there being places perhaps where you can make it a little bigger, or at the very least, there is the expectation that you can make it better, or there's people out there that are doing better. All of you, I'm very sure, went through many stages during the development of your company where your efforts might not have seemed like they were paying off, like you were working uphill and things were getting very difficult. I'm wondering, what exactly were and are your motivations when creating your company? Is it having something of your own, improving the world, making it big? What was it that kept you going through those moments and keep you going right now? If I can go with Pablo, perhaps.
Well, you're basically asking what is the reason that I have to actually face every time the wall of my bed from my bed and going to work, and it's basically that I really love what I do. I really have a lot of freedom, and it's just like if I had a painting, a white painting, and if I was able to draw the picture that I wanted every single day. And it is really, really cool, because I know what it is to work for a company, and being the one who actually is able to develop the company and to actually achieve the kind, not just of success, but the kind of impact that you can make in the world, in the people, in society. It's just really cool, and I really love it. And I wouldn't know what specifically it is that makes me do what I do, but as I said, impatience and being like, I don't know, it's just being who I am. I couldn't really work in front of a computer after doing what I'm doing. It's just the opposite of who I am. But basically, the coolest thing is that I can do, or that I've done any kind of work. I mean, from being the CTO to financials to the creative part, communications, marketing, everything. And that's really cool.
Wonderful. Christina, I'd like to know, what are your motivations?
So obviously to generate that positive impact, but I mean, you have to just be sure that this is something you will remember when things don't go as planned. I mean, when you build your own company, there are a lot of up and downs, and you just have to focus and remember what's the main purpose. Why are you there? I mean, things could be much easier maybe in another company if you weren't working for yourself and you were working for another people. But in case you don't remember, make sure you're surrounded by people that remember that there's a purpose, there's a mission, and that's something useful for the society, and that you must build that.
Luis, what are your thoughts on this? What are your personal motivations for carrying on your business?
Yeah. So first, let me tell you about my admiration for my colleagues here, because they are really in extraordinary businesses that are really incredible, awesome, and really conceptually speaking, it's very, very motivating by itself, no? Extracting energy from plants, it's absolutely incredible. So that as a concept is very, very impressive. I'm a little bit more on the commercial, let's say, side, and the practical side of a business model, which is innovating to be much more efficient and to help people to get their groceries at home. That mom with a baby that really is working and cannot go to the supermarket. The husband is also working. The elder people over their 70s with certain, complications with the COVID. They cannot go to the supermarket, and probably the supermarket was their only daily exercise that they could do as an obligation. No? So it's a little bit, motivating at that point, that you're helping society to be much easier, and one of the things I think motivates me very much is when all of the supermarkets stopped their service, we were doing the service no matter what. No? So everybody was working in the company, everybody was surviving as we could. Some of our personal shoppers didn't want to go to the supermarkets because they had fear with the disease, etc. I may be a little bit masochist, but in the end, I like problems, you know, and I like very, very complicated situations, and those are the ones that motivate me most. So if I have to think back in my days of investment banker at Bankers Trust, M&A, and what I've been doing for more than 20 years, I must say that I love what I do. I love taking risks. I love changing the world, and I love having impact in society. Those are my main motivations. Also, talent. I love working with talented people, and I love growing and as I was saying, never surrender to a difficult situation.
I see. Well, Luis, Pablo, Cristina, that actually marks the end of our panel today. First of all, I would like to thank all three of you for taking the time today to share some of your thoughts and insights and experiences. Truly, it was my pleasure to get to meet you, invite you here, and to hear the thoughts that you had to share with us. it's really been an honor, and I want to thank all of you for being present here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And well,
thank you very much for participation. We will share your session through all our newsletters and YouTube channel and our podcast through all our members. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for inviting us.
our pleasure.
Thank you very much. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
So now it's time to wrap up, guys. See you tomorrow at 4 p.m. We will have amazing agenda as usual. Bye-bye.